think
Hey
you missed
guys,
my dog.
welcome. It's okay. It's all
Sorry.
good. No, you're fine. I can edit that out. It's all good. I love talking. What I forgot you told me. What kind of a dog do you have again?
He's half Cavalier, quarter Shih Tzu, quarter Yorkie.
Oh my gosh, that's
So
awesome.
he's
That's awesome.
he's right here. He's a Chinese
Oh
boy.
yes, that's how cute. Look at how cute. I wish I could lift mine and do that. I have another podcast that I've done for about 4 years since COVID, and everybody on there is they hear my dog barking in the background, and they're always like, "Show us your dog." I'm like, I can't pick her up. There's
Yeah,
no
I have to
way.
take the camera.
It was, and I'm just like, yeah, I would love to show her off, but it's like, yeah, no, she's like 60 pounds, and I'm like, nope, I'm not doing that. But no, that's awesome. I absolutely love dogs. Have you always had dogs throughout your life?
Uh, nope, this is my first dog.
Okay.
Yeah, we got him like 5.5 years ago.
Okay.
We did have another dog. We got him at 12, so we had him for only 2 years. But
Okay. All
he
right.
was a mini Aussie, and he had a hormone issue, so he was huge. He was
Oh
like
man.
I don't know, 60 pounds by the time he passed. That was a very dense dog. People would look at him and think he's pick upable, but like he's so much heavier than he looks. Um,
I always wanted a bigger dog because I've never we've had beagles for whatever reason, but yeah, I always wanted a bigger dog, but it's just that I've been told a lot of times they get hip problems and stuff like that, especially as they get older because they're just so
mm,
big.
yeah.
But yeah, well, that's awesome. Well, since we started on dogs, welcome in everybody. It's Joe from Snap Decisions. Uh, Thank you for coming in and listening today. I have the pleasure of having on the show Lauren Whatevs. Lauren, welcome to my show. Thank you so much for being on. I really, really appreciate you coming on and talking some Snap with me today.
Yeah, I'm excited to be here.
No, thank you so much. Um, I wanted to, well, first of all, I've got to say, since I've been doing this, and it hasn't been that long, I've only been doing this for a couple of months or so now. Everyone's been amazing. Like the community here, a little bit as opposed to the other one that I did, which can get a little dramatic at times. The community is so awesome and so welcoming. I reach out to people and they're like, "Oh yeah, sure," like yourself, and I'm like shocked. I'm like, "Oh my gosh, I'm actually having Italians." So, um, what I want to ask you, because this is a curiosity for me, because I was an aspiring journalist. I went to college for it way back in the 80s. I'm old, but I went to college for journalism. So I saw that you write for Marvel Snap. So I wanted to ask you, first of all, let's go into this a little bit. Have you played other games before Snap, like card games anywhere? I like to kind of start with that and see. I played Magic back in the day, back in the 90s when it almost a little bit after it first released. So that's kind of what got me started. But have you played other card games before Snap? And if so, what got you started into card games?
I played a little bit of Magic, some in the 90s, like Friends Big Brother had some, and I think we've looked at them more than played with them. And then I played it a little bit as a teenager, which is, like 20 years ago at this point. Um, did a little bit of competing, not a ton, but like, once or twice with bringing my own deck and once or twice in draft. So I had that experience. Uh, my brother is 11 years younger than me, and the way we've always connected is gaming.
Nice.
Mostly video games, especially Smash Brothers, which we played competitively, but also we played the Pokemon card game. So that's probably my most card game experience.
Okay.
Played that for a few years, but besides like mobile games here and there, and like card adjacent games like Inscription, which isn't like multiplayer but really cool single player card game.
Yep.
I don't actually have a ton of card game experience within those 20 years until now playing Snap.
Wow. Okay. All right. I've tried some others. Like, in fact, I tell people I tried a really bad Marvel card game about, oh my gosh, it has to be going on about 6 years ago. It was called Marvel Battle Lines, actually, and they had it on almost looked like a little tic tac toe board, and you had they were cards and stuff like that, but the characters would like kind of fight on the board and everything. But oh my gosh, people complain about Snap being a money grab sometimes. I'm like, you should have seen that one. Like that, you
Yeah.
literally couldn't even play if you weren't throwing money at them and buying all these cards. You weren't able to actually competitively play the game. So It only lasted a little over a year. I enjoyed it because it came out around the time the MCU stuff was really, really big with Avengers and all that. And I like playing, but literally went to, I think, right before Black Panther came out. And it was like, yeah, we got this big set of Black Panther. And then the next week it said, yeah, the game's shutting down. And I'm
Oh
like,
no.
well, that sucks. And I spend a little too much money with these things, and I've done it with Snap too. And I definitely did it with that as well. And once that happens, that's like the worst feeling ever. You spend like this money on this game. It's like, yeah, this game is dead. And it's like, oh my God, where did my money go? But that's awesome. I love to hear. I love talking about what players come from with this kind of stuff. I played Magic a while ago. I used to go to some tournaments and stuff like that, like bigger tournaments. Where I live in the Northeast, I would drive like a state away sometimes to go and play them. It was cool. I really never won. I would win a few games here or there. I never finished in like the finals or anything like that. But it was always kind of cool atmosphere to see the other people that play and kind of realize that, there are really, really good players out there. The decks that are out there are sometimes hard to beat rather than going into little tournaments. So that's cool that you got to do that. Video game wise, I do a lot of that too. So tell me what are your favorite types of video games that you play?
I mean, Smash Brothers is huge. Always has been, mostly because that's how my friends and I connected. I've been playing since '64. That's also how I connected with my brother, who's so much younger than me. Um, and by the time he was 20, he's much, much better than me. um, but I've played him for like his entire life, so I have him kind of downloaded, and I always say he's the best player I can beat. Um, when we did play competitively in Utah, he was ranked like 40 and I was 150, 200, something like that. Like, so I, I could compete, but not, I barely ever got out of the first round. Um,
What's
he was much better.
What I sometimes wish I had. My sister is about 8 years younger than me, but she never got into video games and stuff. And I always sometimes thought it would be cool to have like a brother or sister and stuff like that that you could do that with. Um, Playing video games, what's that like? What's it like playing a video game competitively? Do you go to like a big tournament? Do you do it from home? Like, is that yeah? How is that?
for for fighting games, especially, it's in person because, and I mean, maybe it's getting better as netcode gets better, but like, those are frame perfect inputs. So even when other games started going online, fighting games, you can play them online, but like the competitive scene that's doing tournaments and stuff, that's always in person. Um, and yeah, you just show up to like I mean, the place that we did it was in this little like computer cafe thing. It was meant for video gaming,
Oh,
and
nice.
they had like a huge LAN setup, but everybody would bring their like their Game Cubes, their Wii's, their Switches.
Okay.
Um, yeah, and the melee scene is the funniest. That's the GameCube scene because they bring in the CRT TVs also to get the
Oh, that's
fastest
awesome.
response times.
That's
um,
fantastic.
yeah. Um, yeah, it's a ton of people, and there's web-based software for tracking like a tournament bracket, and you just play a few sets, fist bump your opponent before you start. Whoever wins, you report it to a tournament organizer, and yeah, it goes from there. There's a little
Wow.
bit of buy-in so that there's a prize pool. I
Yep.
imagine most competitive games are the same way.
Yeah. That's cool though. I've the closest I've ever come to seeing anything like that. I got to go to a Comic-Con in New York up here one year, which was insane. I tell people to go just for the atmosphere, but man, oh man, like the second day it was hard to even walk. Like there was just so many people there. But they had a game they were demoing at some point, and they had like a small tournament, I guess, for people to play, and they were just everybody just sitting. It almost was almost like a little bit of a classroom atmosphere almost, because you had desks everywhere, and the people had, you had the setups everywhere, and people just were on the monitors and they're playing. And I saw that, I'm like, wow, that looks really cool. That's neat that you could do that. So you're a Nintendo fan, I'm taking it then. Yes.
Yeah, I always have
Nice.
been.
Nice.
Like, I had a PS2, I had an Xbox 360, and I did play those quite a bit, but I've always come back to Nintendo. I love local co-op, and I love when it comes to AAA titles, the Nintendo ones are the ones that click for me. Oh.
I have one, and I still oh man, I wish I got this. I wish I had time to play them as much as I could. I just bought before the holidays last year. I bought Super Mario Wonder. Oh my
Mm,
gosh, what a wonderful
that
game
game
that
was
is!
amazing.
Oh
Uh,
my gosh. I didn't even know it was coming out. And usually I try to keep track of that kind of stuff. That brought back so many memories for me because that's what I grew up with. I grew up with the 2D side scrollers. And
yeah.
so when the first Mario came out, my gosh, we played that so much on the original NES. And it's like when this one came out, and I was sitting there, like literally, my wife's in the room, kind of watching me. She'll do that sometimes, and I'm sitting there playing, and I get to the one part of the screen, and Mario goes down a little pipe, and then he disappears. I'm like, where did I go? And I'm looking at the board, and I'm like, he jumped to the back of the actual
Oh
screen.
yeah.
And I'm like, I'm in awe. I'm like, oh my God, I can play like in the background of this. And I'm sitting there, and she's like, yeah, whatever. Like, why are you getting so much joy from this little bit? And I'm like, it's the most ridiculous thing in the world. But I love that. When you get to the part with the hippos, where the hippos are bouncing all over the board, those big hippos, and then the rhino. I love that game. That's one of my favorite games that I've probably played in a long time. I had so much fun playing that game. But yeah, Nintendo's such an underrated system. I think there's games on there, of course, that people will go to play for. I know the Pokemon games are usually big on there, and things like that. But yeah, I really enjoy playing the Switch. It's where I work. I actually work in Best Buy. I got to be really close friends with the Nintendo rep, and he and I chat all the time about stuff. And he keeps coming in saying, I really don't understand why my company isn't pushing to put out a new system. But he said it just seems like they're happy with what they have, and people are still buying it. And I said, yeah, I guess it's doing okay, man. I guess why broke what's not, or fix what's not broken. So
Yeah, the Switch is doing so well compared to the Wii U. So,
yeah, yeah.
I mean, I think the Switch too, if it's close enough, but like more powerful and they can launch with some good titles, I think they'll be totally fine with Switch 2.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. The thing with them was it always seems as if like it's the third party titles. I think that a lot of people ask for the stuff that goes to like the PlayStation and the Xbox. Like your bigger games like Call of Duty and stuff like that are the ones that people are like, yeah, I'd rather get those on the bigger systems. I'm a big RPG guy. Do you ever play any RPGs and stuff on your systems?
I've played some, Pokemon, which
Yep.
is, kind of a more childish one for sure. I mean, I love Pokemon and it can go deep
Yeah,
for
yeah.
sure. I like the competitive scene and all that.
Yep.
But I also play. Maybe they should have come up with the card conversation, but even though I don't have a lot of card game specific experience, I have tons of tabletop experience, which is both board games
Oh,
and
okay.
tabletop RPGs.
Okay.
So
Okay.
yeah.
All right. That's awesome. Well, yeah. Well, let's talk about that a little bit. Oh my gosh, I was probably, good gosh, 13. And my family grew up with games. My mom, my dad, we always sat around family night and we'd have board games we would play. My grandparents had board games we would play. I got my first taste of role playing stuff because I started playing Dungeons and Dragons when I was about 13 or so. And I remember you'd go to a bookstore at the time and you'd see them in the bookstore. They were in these sets. They had a cardboard box, and you'd buy them, and they'd have a dungeon master guide, and they'd have the campaign guide and stuff like that. And it was a fall. I was amazed by it. I'm like, this is fantastic. You just read along with the stuff and you pick which way to go and you make your characters and all that stuff. What kind of tabletop games did you play? And when did you get into those?
Okay, so like my first RPG was Dungeons and Dragons. I played it when I was like 25, and when I first played it, I was like, why did we not play this as kids? Because my siblings and I played imaginary games all the time. We would take our Legos, we would take
Yes.
I mean, outside we would use croquet mallets and we would be casting fireballs at each other with them.
Yeah. Yep.
And we would record on paper levels and skills that we were inventing our own RPGs and had never played Dungeons and Dragons. And just I was like, how did we miss this? Especially because I know my mom played it when she was a teenager. So it
Yep.
was like that really surprised me. But since then, we've played probably more like 30 when I finally started DMing and playing like in a regular game. But
Okay.
Dungeons and Dragons definitely, and we've tried lots of little one shots. Fate, and there's one called Dread that uses Jenga.
Oh,
It's a
okay.
horror game, and
Oh, nice.
when you topple the tower, your character dies, and so it's really good at that like building suspense because as Jenga progresses, it becomes harder
Yes,
and harder. So it's
yes.
very clever. Um, yeah, a few other little small indie ones like that are super fun, but mostly we go back to D&D.
Man, I love that you were talking about imagination. I talk about that, and from my old man stance, I rant sometimes about the lost things that go away with age. Imagination is, I think, is definitely one of them, and I get it. Technology's changed so much where you don't need it, right? Like when we were kids, when I was about 8 or so, I saw Star Wars for the very first time, and since then, I'm running around with a flashlight because you had no lightsabers. You can buy
Yeah,
one today, but I'm running around with this little metal flashlight with a red tip on it, pretending I'm Luke Skywalker with a flashlight. And then from that point on, like you were saying, it's imagination was all we had because there were no cell phones, there were no iPads or computers that did all this awesome stuff. But we had an amazing time, and like you said, like D&D, we'd literally sit out on. We'd be in my backyard, sitting on the picnic bench, on the picnic table in the back with the manuals and stuff like that, and there we are, and we're pretending to do all this stuff. It was just a fantastic time, and I really think my daughters are in their 20s, so uh, and even them to an extent, like my youngest daughter more so, but she never really got to go experience really much of that because by the time she was 9 or 10 or 11, she was already into all the electronic stuff, the phones, the iPads, and everything else. And I think there's something missing with that. I really do. I think people miss out on really, really fun times with it. And I get it. Times change, and everything is the way it is. But I love that. That's fantastic. That's exactly how I spent a lot of my childhood. I think that's amazing.
yeah. That's why I like encouraged things like Minecraft for my kid because yeah, she was totally into the iPad and the electronics. She did also love imaginary games, and we played a lot of imaginary Marvel games. For
Yep.
whatever reason, she clicked with Guardians of the Galaxy.
Of course.
Um,
Yeah, mine did too.
yeah, yeah. So when she's like 4 and 5, I'm on the playground and I have to be Groot and Rocket. Um,
that's, that's great. Um,
yeah.
did you take her to see the newest one? The third one?
I didn't. No, she's been so hit and miss on which Marvel movies she is totally bored in, and the others that she likes. So
Like
I've
some of
stopped
them.
taking
Yep.
her into theater so that we can have it at home, and she can be like, "And this one's not clicking for me."
Yep. My youngest took to the Guardians too, and she's not a real big comic book or Marvel fan, but she loved them too. When I took her to see the last one, oh my gosh, she cried like a baby. She
Oh,
sat there with tears streaming down her face, and I'm like, oh my god, I feel bad now that I took her to this movie. But yeah, it was kind of sad, especially if you're an animal lover. That was hard to watch
oh
with
yeah,
some
the
of the stuff that
planet.
was.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, that was a little tough to watch. I felt bad. But yeah, that's awesome. I love to hear that. And yeah, it's just now you mentioned the Jenga horror. Are you a horror fan?
Ish. Yeah.
Okay.
I do like the horror movie and
Love it.
D&D horror. We've played like three little indie ones, and they've all been really fun.
That's really cool. I'm a big slasher fan. I love slasher films from like the 70s
Mm.
and 80s and 90s. Um, some horror I can watch. The bloody stuff I don't mind at all. The supernatural stuff and especially like the demonic possession stuff, nope, I'm out.
Oh,
I can't watch. I can't.
it's funny
I
how everybody has their thing. That's like
Yep.
that's too far.
I
It's
I
too
got
real.
ruined. Yeah, I got ruined by The Exorcist when I was very, very young boy. I snuck down
Oh,
and watched it when I was probably about 9. My dad had it on TV, and I'm watching it, and I'm like, and now when I see any of that stuff, it's like, nope. Now the things they could do with that, where like when the new one just came out, they put they had the remake come out a little bit ago, and they were shocked. I literally, when that would come up on my screen on the TV, I'd take my iPad and I would literally hold it in front of my face so I wouldn't see the screen. I'm like a big
uh,
baby. I can't. I was like, nope, I can't watch.
I can see a young exposure to The Exorcist doing that. See, I didn't see it till I was in my 20s.
Oh, I
I
won't even watch it.
just
Yep. Go ahead. I'm
just
sorry.
this past weekend, I've been asking for like 2 years. Although given that my child is 12, I'm glad I waited. But I just got to show my fiance and my child Jennifer's Body, which is one of my favorites. It's
Mm,
very campy and comedic. It's written by the same writer as Juno.
Yep.
Um, but that's like one of my favorite horror movies, and I know it's not like the traditional horror, but uh, I think they both liked it. So I was glad
Well,
I
that's
finally got to show that to them.
yeah. Yeah, that's a fun film. I remember seeing that one. I don't mind injecting some humor into horror. I grew up with the original Evil Deads. So
Mm-hmm.
with Bruce Campbell and stuff like that, and that for many people was when they first saw it, they're like, this is a little weird. Because it's like, you have all these crazy things going on, but yet he's making you laugh and it's a little bit funny at the same time. I kind of like that stuff now. Like there's more of that now. And I think it's cool because it ranges in different emotions. You're not just sitting there like waiting to be scared the entire time. You get that little bit of a relief with the
Mm-hmm.
actual comedy that's going on with it too. So I kind of think that's cool. Um, I yeah, that's awesome. I love it. I will talk horror with anyone for hours. I love that stuff. My mom too was a big horror fan. In fact, she had all the novels and stuff like that of the films.
Oh,
So I can
cool.
remember seeing like her books. Oh my gosh, I wish she kept them. Some of those are so expensive now that because they don't exist anymore. But she would have the paper. I remember seeing a paperback of the original Halloween, and it was just a person wearing a sheet on the cover and had a pumpkin on their head, and that's how the artwork was for the book. And she had the original novel for The Exorcist, and to this day I tell her, I'm like, how in God's name did you read that stuff before you went to bed? Like every time, every night she had the books. I'm like, how are you reading this and going to bed afterwards? And she's like, just so. And I'm like, so I guess that's probably where I got a lot of it from. But yeah, that's awesome. What's the late? Have you seen any films lately in movies or anything like that? Horror films at all?
I mean, Jennifer's Body this past weekend.
Okay.
My autobiographical memory is so bad.
Oh, it's all good. It's all
I might
good.
have to. I'd have to quiz my fiance or child to figure out what else we've watched recently.
Mm, no problem. All right, yeah, I get you. I get you. Yeah, I always think it's an oldism where sometimes I don't remember what I ate for breakfast the day before. So I get you. All right, I want to ask you. Okay, let's get into some Marvel Snap. I want to ask you. You write for them, so how did that come about for you? How did you start writing for Marvel Snap?
Okay, I write for Snap Zone, which is one of the
Hmm.
biggest fan sites.
Yep.
Um, I let's see. I'd been playing for about 4 or 5 months,
Hmm.
and of course, I was familiar with the fan sites, especially Snap Fan and Snap Zone,
Hmm.
um, but Untapped too. Uh, they just didn't have editorial content. So like, sure, it's a great place to go get decks, but like, I was interested in editorial content, and the stuff that like Den and Safety Blade write is incredible,
Yep.
but I wanted to go so much deeper, and I could see like they have all this data. Like I live on their like the stats page for like win rates and all that. They're just like they don't go very deep. And I had spent 8 years as a data analyst
Okay.
for a solar company,
Oh.
and so in that time I was self-taught over that entire time. But I got very good, and I was like, there's so much more we could do with this data. And so I was like, I'm just gonna reach out and ask, like, hey, if I write for you using this data, can I get access to your data? It was very it was almost a selfish endeavor because I was just like, I want to do interesting things. I want to find deck interactions that are flying under the radar, and I want to like get get tips on unusual ways to play that might be beneficial.
Yeah.
Um, so the first one I reached out to, I actually reached out to Howling Minds, who was the community manager over at Snapzone at the time, but he was kind of the face of it. Um, and he's like, "Oh, actually, I'm just the community manager. There's this other guy you should talk to who's the owner, who kind of does things behind the scenes."
Yeah.
And so I did, and he was on board for getting another writer who
Wow.
would do data stuff.
That's
And
awesome.
so I didn't even go to SnapFan or Untapped, who were like my backup options. Um, and so I started getting into the data and familiarizing myself with their database. And um, yeah, so for a little while I was writing roughly weekly. Now it's more like monthly.
Okay.
Um, and I don't know if you've read some of my older stuff, but I used to do much more stuff based on user data. Um, so like I had an article that was about, is it good to play into unrevealed locations? And I like looked at the stats, like, what's the win rate for players who play into unrevealed locations versus those who don't? I was like, oh yeah. And I also looked at the like the math of bad locations and good locations. What's the odds that you play onto the right and it ends up being bar with no name? You know, I concluded like mostly it's pretty safe and even good to play into unrevealed locations. So those were the kind of things I wanted to do, is look into stuff that just like win rates and queue rates couldn't tell you. I ended up also getting super into the game economy where it's complex. Like I'm not doing bundle evaluation, but like when the spotlights came out, I was like, okay,
Yeah.
here's how to optimize them. Here's how spotlights compare to the old system. And ever since writing that like ultimate guide to spotlights, I've had my had the pulse on the economy, had my
Yep.
finger on the economy's pulse. That's it. Um, and so I end up talking about, what happens with economy changes. My article is supposed to be for January, but it's slightly delayed. Is very much about the inclusion of an extra card every season
Yep.
and this reduction in the series drop rate. Now that we know like series drops are back, but they're pretty slow. I was always expecting them to come back in full force eventually, and it doesn't seem like that's going to be the case. So I've interviewed Steven for this. He's the I should pull up his title. He's like the VP of product and design or something like
Okay.
that at
Yeah. Yeah.
Second Dinner. But he's basically the guy who invented the economy of the game.
Okay. Wow.
Um, and so I told him ahead of time, like, I'm not going to go easy on you. And I didn't. And he's like, I'm going to need another week because these are meaty questions, which is totally fine.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, but I think that'll be really good. Whenever it comes out, I can talk about like the impact that this, going to 64 cards a year instead of 52, the impact of that. Um, and to have all these like insider answers from Steven, I hope that he is thorough. I think he will be because he seemed to like the questions.
That's
It was
cool.
a very long answer for how I got started in Snapseed.
No, no, I love that. That's really awesome. There's oftentimes I find myself thinking, and I know like a lot of us as gamers, you tend to not look maybe behind the scenes for things like that, and I love that that you do. Um, it's great to have that kind of information because many times I'll just be playing casually for a little bit, and I'm going through like even last night I'm playing some ladder, which I very rarely do anymore because I just don't get the time to play as much as I could, and I get frustrated with it sometimes. So I'm playing it last night, and I'm playing like 2-3 matches in a row, and then I notice with like you had mentioned the locations, I noticed that I get the same one 3 straight times, and I'm like, why does this happen when there's so many and I just keep getting like I tell everybody on the show too, and we laugh about it, but whenever I play, I've gotten adverse to like certain decks to having to play against them. Destroy is one of them
I
because
hate Destroy.
oh my gosh, I'm glad I found someone else who's like that. I put that on my X account, and everybody's like, Destroy is great. Why don't you like it? I was like, I hate every time I play it, and it happened last night. Well, last night, of course, too, because Bar Sinister, I think, was the weekend mission location. And I'm like, oh dear God. That's the perfect location for them. They just stick the Venoms and the Carnages on there, and you're dead. And so I'm playing last night, and I'm like, all right, I'm going to play, and I'm a big Galactus fan. I always have been from the comic books, and I love the card. And so I put a Galactus deck together with goblins. So I figured I'll fill that location up with goblins, and they can't do anything with it. But every single time I play, they seem to get, and this is even before the weekend thing, they always seem to get a location that helps them. A destroy location will always pop up on there. So there you go. Have you ever looked into like how, I guess, the statistics of like something like that, like how many destroy locations are there, and how how many do they pop up? I love that that you do that. That's fantastic. But like the economy thing, that's been such a hot thing with people lately because of the fact that they're not showing bundles and everything anymore. So people don't like it because they can't get prepared for it. Listen, it's hard. Money is tight with everybody right now for everything. When you can go to a grocery store and have to spend 60, $70 on on one bag of groceries, it's hard. And so for a game, when you're trying to budget yourself, and then you don't know now what it's going to be, it's very difficult to do. But I love that you're looking into that. So yeah, what the location type thing, and I'll go back to that. How do you even like? And I know I'm there. I will never understand a lot of it because math was one of the worst things I've ever had to do, which is why I went into journalism, because I didn't want to have to use math. So, how do you even start? Like when you're looking into stuff like that and just looking at stats. Do you pull them up on a computer? Do like I couldn't even imagine where you start to do something like that.
Yeah. So I get quite a lot of match data, only from people using the Snap Zone tracker.
Yep.
But I get locations, I get win rate, I get who retreated, I get which turn it was, how many cubes it was for, exactly which cards were played on which turn. Um, I shouldn't say exactly. I get the cards that are still on the board at the end of the game. So for like destroy, it's kind of invisible. I don't get to see the things that got destroyed. Um, and then it's just about aggregating that data, which is very easy to do with SQL. Um, which is the language that we use in the SnapZone database. Um, but yeah, I'm just looking at like, okay, um, we'll stack location 1, location 2, location 3, put those all in a single column so I can see the appearance rate of every single location in the game. And then I can just look and see like, okay, what percentage of games does this location come out in this location? It's very easy from there to determine the rarity of the location,
Wow.
because there's like 4, maybe 5 buckets of rarity for locations in the game. Um, and like everything that's in the common bucket shows up at the same rate. Uh, and then in the ultra rare rarity is just ego and world ship. These are the ones that show up hardly ever.
Yeah.
Uh, so start with that. And then like for the one where I was looking at unrevealed locations, I just manually went through the list and like, okay, which ones are very good, neutral, kind of bad, very bad to play into blind. Um, and then from there, I can connect those ratings to the location names and their frequencies and see like, oh, like 85% of the time you play blind, it's going to be neutral or good. Um, So yeah, I haven't done that for Destroy, but that is certainly one of the problems with Destroy is
Oh
that
my
it has
gosh.
so many beneficial locations.
Oh, it
Um,
does.
yeah,
Yeah, yeah, it drives me crazy. Like there's certain things with there's certain things with this game, and a lot of people say like they listen to my show and they're like, "I like your show because you rant," and I'm like, "Yeah, I do. I'm a ranter. I
yeah,
used to I used to rant when I worked for I was a DJ on a radio station doing late night DJing, and a lot of times I would do that because it's like, what are you gonna do? I'm doing a show from 11 to 2 in the morning. It's like who's even listening at this point? So who cares? So I'm just gonna go off on certain topics, and that's what I do. But yeah, I get started on certain things with this game, and like when you look at statistics, like you do, it's a fascinating thing because I think to myself, how does this happen? If I try to play a certain deck, like Mr. Negative, I hate that's another one. I can't stand it. If whenever I play it, I don't see the card. Either I do not see Mr. Negative in my hand, or I will get it, and then every card that you need to be flipped also are in my
already in
hand.
your
Yeah.
hand. Yeah,
So it's like, what am I going to do with this? It's like I can't. But yeah, it just there, and I love it that you look at that because I know, like me, when you're a casual player or really any player, and you end up with that, you get to the point where like something just hates me here. Like this can't be, this can't be, the statistics are just wrong. It can't happen this way because it happens to me all of the time when, people really don't realize like what you do. That's not really what it is. It just sometimes there's just bad luck. There's just bad RNG. That's just the way
Yeah.
it happens. And that's why you really have to learn in this game, um, how to snap and when to leave the game, because that's probably the most important thing you could do. If you don't, then you're sticking around hoping that your RNG is going to change in a game, and it's probably not. And you're better off just going. But that's fascinating. Um, what do you think? What's your opinion, on the economy stuff? I know that it's a touchy subject. Again, a lot of people you're starting to see. I know I saw some posts from people on Twitter last week about some of the bundles and things are now starting to go up a little bit, and it's, you know, people were a little bit concerned because we know that the whole new verse thing happened, and they're not going to be involved with the game anymore, and stuff like that. So. What's your opinion of the economy and Snap? Do you think it's at a good spot now? Do you think it needs to improve the cash system? I know people are always going to complain about that, no matter what you do. I think it's just people just like it. They don't like it. I personally don't mind it. I mean, I think it's fine. But yeah, what are your thoughts on that? And what are your thoughts about now how they're releasing one more card? So now it's, today it's not just the season pass, but you're getting a card release today as well. So what's your opinion on that? I'd love to hear your opinion on the economy of the game.
Yeah, this will be very much covered by my next article, but I'd be happy to talk about it. Um, Spotlight caches, from the beginning, I did the math and I was like, these things seem good. They seem like they deliver on more cards for more players.
Mhm.
Um, and even when it's like kind of the same amount of cards for some players, it's more of those cards are series 4 and 5 cards. They're new release cards. And I imagine some people have forgotten or they weren't into the game at the time, but before we had Spotlight caches, we're talking the first half of last year, every time a content creator had a video covering a new card, the comments would just be full of people saying, "Can't wait to play this in 6 months." And it was so disheartening as both a
Yeah.
player and a content creator that like there was so much negativity about like I just can't get new cards. And so Spotlight caches have been extremely successful in that regard. Um, and we can see it. I can see it in stats from Snapzone. I get collection stats too, but also like they've told us, and that, there's no reason I don't think to doubt that that they've said like they've been successful at getting new cards into players' hands. Um, so I've been watching closely, like when does the new system become worse for free to play players? Because with series drops on hold, series 4 and 5 just keeps getting bigger and bigger and bigger. Um, and in the previous system, series drops happened basically once a week, like not literally, but on average. If you'd have a 5 week season, at the end of it, 5 cards would drop to series 3. And so, with the exception of big bads, cards dropped on a fixed schedule. Once they hit a certain age, I think like 5 months, they'd be into series 3. Um, and that kept series 4 and 5 at the exact same size. They would always be 23 cards. Um, and now we're up to, I don't remember off the top of my head, something like 45. We have a big number. There's a big number of series 4 and 5 cards. And it seems like that's just going to continue to grow because now that we do have series drops coming back, but it was like 5 cards. And
Mm.
they've said they're happening a few times a year in a similar way, which makes me think, okay, maybe like once a quarter, we're going to drop 5 or 6 cards. But there's way more than 5 or 6 cards coming out in a quarter.
Yep.
So back when it's like, okay, we get 52 cards a year, 1 card a week. There's a point where series drops, because of them being slow and because of series 4 and 5 getting big, that free to play players will be missing more cards than they were in the old system.
Mm.
And that was going to be like my critical point where it's like, okay, I need to be really like, we need to talk about this second dinner. This is not okay that,
Yep.
it's more cards for more players. And then it's no longer the case. But then they changed to the 64 card year, which is experimental. We don't know if it's going to stick, but I imagine it does.
Yeah.
Um, and that I was not expecting. with the 64 card year, it just the way that the math works out, it both gives free to play players more cards and means they're missing more cards.
Mm.
It does
Hmm.
both at the same time. And um and so they can still technically say like it gives you more cards. Um I ran a poll on Twitter like what's more important to you? Like having a more complete collection or having more cards?
Yep.
And it was almost 50-50. For me, I would much rather have a near complete collection. Like I'm okay if I'm missing discard because I don't really play discard or
Yep.
whatever. Um, but the more cards you're missing, that's more often that you run into an awesome deck online and you're missing one of the cards. And you have to ask, how do I replace this? Or maybe I just can't play this deck. Which is a bad feeling when everyone's talking about this awesome deck or awesome card and you can't play it, and that's going to happen more often if players are missing more cards. Um, but there were other players who were like, I don't really care if I'm missing more cards overall. If I have more pieces to play with, I can see arguments on both sides. But that's the kind of unexpected thing that happened with them adding the extra card is it does both.
Wow. Okay. Interesting.
You know?
Interesting. What do you so most of the time when I talk economy with other guests that I've had on, everybody seems to point at pool three as a way that they can fix it.
Mhm.
I don't know. I just don't like you were saying, for new players, it's hard. I tried to go back and I've been playing. I didn't play beta. I was in after beta, like a month or so, probably after
Me
beta when
too.
I started. But I figured, you know what? I opened up a free to play account. I saw a video of TLSG doing it, and I'm like, this is interesting. So let me do this. So I did it, and I tried to go in, and I'm like, let me see if I can kind of get the feeling what it's like if I were to be starting now. So it was just about maybe 4 months ago I decided to do it. And I can see, you get through pool one, you get through through pool two, and then you get to three. And it's like, that's when, like, even when I'm playing games on ladder, and especially if you're trying to play games in conquest, you are seeing, like, I'll sit there with I'm playing a dino deck, and so I'm sitting there with a devil dinosaur deck. But then I'm coming up against complete destroy decks. So somebody that has the venom, the carnage, all of the necessary cards they need to make a really good destroy deck. And I'm coming up against this over and over and over again. And of course, I'm losing because they have every piece they need. I have a piece here and a piece there. I might have for let's say a Wong White Tiger deck. I might have the Wong and I might have the White Tiger, but I don't have the other pieces they need. And yet I'm seeing people who do. And it's like, okay, this kind of sucks. So I don't, yeah, I often wonder, like, I don't even know if that would fix it. And if it would, or if you could fix that, how would you? And then I often thought, like, a lot of the other games that I've played, right? When you're playing Magic and you're playing Pokemon and stuff like that, you get packs. They give you card packs. And even digital online games that I've played, they give you card packs. Would that be something, like a way you could think of that they could help this along? Like, instead of doing the caches, or, I've had people say, well, maybe give caches more often. Maybe you don't wait as long as you do in pool three and you just give them like every other one. And then this way they get that complete easier. So how would you, if you were given the keys to the car and they said to you, hey, I want you to work on our economy, and I want you to make it so that we get this a little more even and maybe a little bit better for players that are just starting the game, because that's really important to them. Because yeah, you're gonna have your diehards, the people that are playing the game. They're hooked on it no matter what. You're gonna, like, people like me, and that you're gonna play it no matter what happens, unless they really really do something insane, like where they start charging double for a season pass or doing like that kind of stuff. Then people are gonna be like, yeah, I'm out. But for newer players and stuff like that, how would, if you were able to do it, and if they said to you, hey, help us fix this early game play, how would you go about doing it?
Yeah, there's a lot of pieces to that. So like when you're playing ladder, the matching within a similar collection level is pretty strong. That gets weaker the further you get in conquest. So like early conquest, that's still pretty strong, but by infinity, I think it's very weak. I don't even
Okay.
know if there is any collection level matching. Um, and I have in Infinity Conquest as a player who has an almost complete collection. I have run into players who are clearly early Series 3, and I'm like, oh, I feel really bad that I'm
Yep.
winning just because I have cards that you don't have.
Yep.
Um, and so in some ways, I think the game has talked about having unique collections, and I think unique collections are interesting up until like early Series 3. You're a quarter of the way through Series 3, something like that. And then it's like by then you have a grasp on the game. You've seen almost every card because the players you're matching against have the Magneto that you don't have yet or whatever. I think players could definitely handle getting Series 3 at a faster rate. Right now, it's like 6 to 7 months with the season pass to complete season 3 or Series 3 or thousands of dollars, right?
Yep.
Um, and only Second Dinner has the stats on like what's the churn rate
Yeah.
like for players who are in Series 3 versus complete? Like if they're losing players faster once they're Series 3 complete, then why would they speed it up? Or if maybe people are paying big bucks to get through Series 3. I certainly was the biggest spender to finish Series 3. Or like that was my most spending in the game. Um, and now I'm down to mostly just the season pass, and
Yep.
that's enough to keep up.
Yeah, me too.
Whereas before I was 100 to 200 a month.
Yep.
I think you need a solution for gamers, people who are experienced gamers, to get series or like to get collection complete or at least like competitive faster. That's a
Yep.
lot to ask, especially like if you want to bring in new content creators. It's a lot to ask. Like, hey, thousands of dollars or 7 months, and then you can be a serious player.
Yeah.
Um, I've seen ideas for like, okay, can we do a subscription? $25 a month, something like that, to unlock every card. I think
Okay.
something like that would be awesome. Um, or even like a one time, like $500, you get every card. That's outrageously expensive. Yes, but also it's a lot cheaper than it is right now.
That's true. Yeah.
Um, so I think something like that would be good, something to help get serious players into the game faster or experienced gamers. Um, I think I might be really aggressive with it. Like, hey, by the time you're a quarter of the way through Series 3, you can just unlock all of Series 3.
Mm,
um, if they wanted me to be a little more realistic with it, I'd probably just double the rate. Right now, you get 2 Series 3 cards every 120 CL, and I might just change that to like, okay, every one of those caches has 2 Series 3 cards in it. Another thing that's a problem is like the choice. Like, which Series 3 cards are you getting? You get one per month. That's like the free one that you can choose.
yep.
But even that, you have to wait for it to cycle into your shop. And if you miss the one because you didn't check that 8 hour period, you have to wait for it to show up again. Like, that's like, just let me choose. I want death this month,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
and I think I haven't spent a lot of time thinking about this, but the way I would go right now
Hmm.
would be I would be cutting off Series 3 because currently it's set to continue expanding forever too. And there are some cards that are a lot more core than other cards. I would be cutting it off. I'd be setting it to like 50 cards, 70 cards, something like that, and then bumping everything up. Okay, Series 4 is the new Series 3, Series 5 is the new Series 4, Series 6 is the new
Mm,
Series 5. And like everything that goes with that, Series 4 now costs 1,000 tokens, Series 5 costs 3,000, Series 6 costs 6,000. And yeah, you would just have to do that every now and then. You would have to cut off like, okay, we're doing a new series and then bumping everything up. But
yeah.
that way you can curate, you have a stronger curation over they're going to get this set of 60 cards first before they start dipping into the next set that are more niche or less critical. Like when I finished Series 3, it was probably about 90 cards big, and my last card was Mystique, who's not the most important Series 3 card, but it was one that I'd been wanting for a long time, and it was the very last one I got. Um, but then I got like Magneto was one of my first, and I felt ridiculously powerful having Magneto when hardly any of my opponents did.
Yep.
Um, Yeah, and I think that's something that like the series 1 and 2 experience does a lot better, is it like curates which set of cards you're getting.
Yep, agreed. Agreed. Yeah. Yeah, it's a crazy thing. I mean, no one can be perfect. Yeah, there's so many different games out there, and then they do things a lot of different ways. Like one of the cool things about this is you can look forward to getting new stuff every month. I mean, when you play Magic, you're waiting 3 months or sometimes 4 months, depending when they come out with a new set. Now I know it's changed over the years, but back when I played, my gosh, you would see sometimes you'd see 2 sets, maybe 3 new sets a year. Now it's a lot more often, but even still, yeah, it's really it's and I get it. They tried to aim a little bit different with this, and like you were saying, talking about the unique collections and everything like that. And I get that, but then you're also like as you were saying, you get people who, especially I think casual players, that they try to come in and they start out and then they just get either way too far behind. And then if you leave, if you go away from the game for a little bit and then you try to come back, it could be very overwhelming, because then you're seeing, like you said, you're seeing all of this cool stuff that everybody's using, and you really almost have no way of competing depending on like what the meta's like. So yeah, it's man, I don't know. I'm kind of glad that I don't work in a card game place and have to decide all this stuff, because it's almost a situation where you're damned if you do and you're damned if you don't. Ultimately, they're a corporation. They have to make money. That's just what it is. And I think sometimes people forget about that. But on the other hand, with games like this, your starting point has to be good, because if you're not catching people at the beginning, you're not going to keep them. They're just going to find other things to spend their money on, and go into something else and be like, yeah, this I'm out. I can't do this. It's frustrating and it just sucks. So it's crazy. But yeah, I like to talk about this because I know a lot of people bring this up with Marvel Snap and stuff like that. Which, listen, being honest, and you've played other games before too, this probably comes up in every game, just not necessarily this way. You take any mobile game and talk about it. I mentioned that other one I used to play earlier, but you even go into some of these other ones that are out there. That World of Warcraft game that just came out not that long ago. That thing's a money grab too. You want to do anything, you're paying a couple bucks here, a couple bucks there, a couple bucks here. It's just what it is, and that's just what mobile games kind of are. And so I think people, it's kind of like a little bit of a buyer beware. Yeah, come in, check it out. But if you find out that it's just either frustrating you, or if it's not worth your money and you're gonna have to spend a little bit, probably not necessarily the game for you.
Yeah, in that way, Snap is so friendly, right?
Yeah,
Like compared to other games,
yeah,
even compared to other card games, not just mobile. Like mobile is a mobile's an interesting market and very
yeah,
predatory and all that, right? So it's like when
yes,
you're comparing against mobile, it's like, oh wow, you're better than mobile, impressive. But I've seen a lot of card gamers be like, this game's actually way cheaper than most card games.
yeah,
Um, but like it's so free to play friendly. You might have to play for a while until you're competitively viable, but you can do well for free.
yeah.
Um, I We have had free to play players do well in tournaments. I think that's getting increasingly more difficult to do because they're
Mhm.
releasing powerful season pass cards. Um, but you can reach infinite. You can get infinity borders. You can do that on a free to play account. I've seen people do it. Um, and to get a full collection is reasonably priced. I've pretty much maintained it for $10 a month.
Yep.
Um, and I think like, if you're that's very optimized and not having terrible luck with spotlight keys. But if we take that away, like if okay, say you do have terrible luck with spotlight keys, or you don't want to do perfect optimization, you want to spend some of your gold on variants. Okay, so $20 a month, $25 a month. Like consider that your subscription fee to have a competitive collection. That's pretty reasonable if it's like your hobby
Yeah,
that you're playing a lot.
100%.
Um, and that's one of the reasons why I think spotlight caches are such an improvement over the old economy. In the old economy, it was like $200 a month to get every card, and
Yep.
now it's 10 to 20. Um, maybe a little bit more with the introduction of an extra card every season, but I don't know. Like people always talk about how much worse the economy has gotten. I'm like, I'm going from 200 a month to 20 a month was a pretty big improvement.
Yeah. 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 No, I agree. Are you collection complete? Do you have the whole set?
I was for a very long time. Well,
Okay.
for I don't know, 4 or 5 months I was, and with the introduction, well, as soon as we started getting data mines of an extra card every season, that's when I was
Yep.
like, I need to start being a little bit careful. Like, I'm gonna skip one card every couple months.
Mm,
So
yeah.
I skipped Black Knight and I skipped Gladiator, and then both of them I ended up getting with tokens. So I'm not doing a great job with that. what I've what I've basically decided to do is I'm gonna skip discard. I don't know, maybe we'll go several months without discard and I'll have to pick something else to skip. But I'm like, I just know that's not a type that I play very much. Even Black Knight, who like once he got buffed and the Ebony
Oh
Blade is
man.
ridiculous now, it's
Yeah.
like
So yeah, it
is
is.
fun, but just like it's not my type of deck. I can't play it for an extended period of time.
Yeah.
So that let me skip Meek. That's going to let me skip Corvus Glaive and Proxima Midnight. And I think
Very
they're going
true.
to be good cards, but just like I just know they're not my type. And I
Yep.
can save a lot of resources by skipping just a couple cards here and there.
That's a great point. I don't think that I've ever had anybody quite mention it that way, but that's a great point. Yeah, like if you're not into a certain type of deck that like I said, Mister Negative, things like that, and then they release a card that specifically is designed for that deck type, so you're not just like, yeah, I'm never going to play it anyway. While it'd be cool to have, I'm probably not ever going to make a deck with it or plays a deck consistently that does that. Then I'll skip it. Yeah, that's a great point. I love that actually. That's a great shout. Something that people can, those of you that are listening can, think about that. Hey, I'm having trouble keeping my collection complete. But if you don't really play it anyway, like you said, I mean, I can remember trying to complete, and I get the completionist part of it too, because I did that when I
Mhm.
played Magic. I'd go out and I'd buy a box of Magic cards when a new set would come out, and we would, organize through and see which ones we got, which ones we didn't, and we end up buying packs until we complete the set. It's just a completionist thing, and there are people that want to do that. But when you were missing a card or two, and especially if you knew that it's not that big. Like for Magic, I played straight black. That's all I ever played was straight black discard. And so if I would look to see if cards were good for my deck. If they weren't, and then I'm missing like a blue white or a blue or white card or something, or a green card, I didn't care that much, because it's like I'm
Mhm.
not gonna play it anyway. So I love that. Yeah, that's a great point. Um, so all right. You don't like this card. What decks do you play? What decks do you like to play?
All right. So I recently had a big deck building. I've been working on honing a couple decks for a couple weeks,
Okay.
and they kind of didn't go anywhere. And I had this like big introspective moment where it's like, oh, I don't really like Conquest because it's so tech heavy. Even though I do like the battle like 10 cubes, I like that format a lot.
Yes, I do too.
But because it's like one loss, you're out,
Right.
uh, it becomes so much like what deck are you matched up against? And now we see like Sarah
Yeah.
Tech is the strongest card in Conquest.
Yep.
And it's like so the decks I'm building, they're not running a lot of tech and they don't do well in Conquest. And so I'm like having this kind of like existential moment where it's like, well, Conquest is my favorite mode, but I am a deck builder, and deck building is less creative in Conquest because you have to run tech, or get very lucky with your matchups.
Yep.
So like it's okay in Silver, you have to have two good matchups, but in Infinity, you have to have five good matchups in a row, and that's very hard to do without tech. Um, and kind of like going through this existential crisis, like came to the realization like, okay, I like decks that are clever and play small cards. I'm not a big fan of big cards, generally speaking.
Okay.
Um, and that can actually compete. So it's like Lockdown, which is basically aggro. Quinny Equinox noticed that a month or two ago, and I'm like, yeah,
Yep.
that's perfect. Lockdown is the aggro in this. You stop your opponent from being able to do the big stuff before they, you know, you get there before they do.
Yep.
Um, a bounce mini move, which is like the silky smooth.
Yep.
Um, anything with Valkyrie. uh, Hitmonkey and Elsa, I've really liked those cards, and so I'm excited for them to probably maybe be viable again.
Yeah, it looks
Um,
like Elsa might be making a comeback. Yeah.
yeah, and Glenn kind of said stay tuned for Elsa maybe
Yeah,
getting a buff,
I
and
would be
then we have
surprised if that wasn't in this coming patch, actually. Yeah. Yep.
right, and then we have Black Swan, who obviously is a Hitmonkey friendly card,
Definitely.
um, or at least a small cards friendly card.
Yep.
So, yeah, I like decks that can let me do clever things and can compete without playing giant cards.
Okay. Yeah, fair enough. I've always I don't know, I guess you could kind of say since the start, I'm more of a I'm more of a combo guy, I guess, if you want to call it that. And that's, I mean, it. I liked ramp when it first came out, so I was always into like the electro, the wave, like ramping a deck out. And then, of course, when I pulled Galactus, and I tell people this story too, it's the
Mm-hmm.
reason why I like him because I got him from an original cache. So when they first put big bads into caches, I was like, oh my god, I want Thanos because I'm a big Thanos fan from the MCU. But when I pulled Galactus, I'm like, oh wow. I opened a cache one day and there it is. I'm like, oh my gosh, I got a big bat in a cache, and they were rare. Like you do the stats,
Yeah,
they were like super hard to get.
very, very rare.
Yeah, and I pulled it, and then I'm seeing it, and I'm looking at it like, why the hell would I want to play this? Why would I want to destroy the other two locations? And but then I didn't realize, and now you're then. So it took me a little bit, and then I start to see the people that actually got it and are playing it with, and they lock you down with the Spider-Man, and they do all this other stuff, and I'm like, ah. And I'm like, look what I missed now for like the last month or so that I could have been using because probably no one had the card. But yeah, it's really it's fun that people can choose like all different kind of ways to play. But I love what you said about the difference between ladder and conquest. Ladder, and the way I've seen it is, and I have not hit infinite yet. The closest I got was 99. I literally got to
That's
99
so
one time.
sad.
Oh my god, I was so that story, and I tell everybody this story on the show. I got to 99 and I'm playing the game, and I'm literally sitting there like I'm a grown man sitting there, and I'm almost like shaking because I'm like, all right,
Mm-hmm.
I gotta get it, and then I lose, and then I'm like, all right, I lost, and then I lose again, and then I lose again, and now I'm mad. I'm like, all right, nope, I'm gonna stop this dumb losing streak, and I'm gonna. By the time I was done, I dropped to 83 from
Yeah,
99,
it's so
and
killer.
I never recovered. I never recovered, and I could get back to 90 pretty easily, and for whatever reason, I just don't. But it's great because I've had people on this show, I've had other people that I've watched and stuff like that, and I'm starting to learn, and that there are there are certain, like we spoke about a little bit earlier, there's certain ways to play this. You have to know when you don't have a chance and get out, and that's the biggest thing. If you're sticking around thinking, I'm gonna pull this card, you're gonna lose, and you're gonna lose 4 cubes or you're gonna lose 8 cubes. So yeah, it's really cool. It's a cool part of the game. But yeah, I could see your point though about conquest. It's definitely tech heavy, no doubt.
I think I think it's a struggle with the game's design because snapping and retreating are what make this game special.
Yep.
Um, but they're not very casual player friendly.
Yes.
They are gamer moves like retreating and feeling good about retreating. That's a
Yep.
gamer thing.
Yep.
Like I minimized my losses,
Yep.
woo, instead of playing
Yay.
the game.
Yes. Yes.
It's not exciting. And I think like early game players, you have curiosity, like I want to see what they're doing. You have like that gambling, like, oh, if I top deck the one thing I need, then maybe I can actually pull this off. And that's always exciting. Um, but like curiosity is that kills your run when you're trying to climb. But I think early game players have to do that. That's how you learn the game. That's how you learn what opponents' play lines are and learn how to identify decks. Is like you have to stay in and see what they're doing, even if you know you're going to lose. But that is so anti-climbing. And I've
Mm.
seen more casual players say like they need to get rid of snapping and retreating because staying in the game and seeing who wins is the more fun thing to do. Which I think is maybe part of why I like Conquest, because it gets to a point where it's like, if I retreat, I'm dead. So
Yep.
I'm staying in no matter what. I'm playing to my outs. Like I gotta struggle. And every now and then you can do that win where you're, 2 versus 8 and you end up pulling it
Yeah.
off.
Yeah.
Um yeah, I don't think they should cut snapping and retreating. I think that's what makes the game interesting.
Yeah, I
But
agree.
but it's also like if you are not climbing to infinite, it's almost definitely a snapping or retreating issue.
Yep.
And I'm saying that having my first 6 months playing or first 5 months, I didn't get infinite,
Yep.
and then I finally did. Jeff season, April was my first, and then I missed it the next season. I was like, oh, I thought I figured this out, and I did very similar to you. I got to like 96, 98, something like that, and then just tanked 20
Yep.
ranks.
Yep.
So I know what that's like. I know what that huge tank is like. I used to do it every season, 10 to 20 ranks, and it feels awful.
Yep.
Um,
Yep.
yeah,
Uh,
I think anybody can be coached how to get to infinite. I think you could get there totally.
I have
Glazer kind of is.
no, go
I
ahead.
was gonna say Glazer is kind of the one who coached me there the first time, or
Yep.
actually, it was the second time. I had like a season where I didn't get it, and I was like, oh, I'm never gonna do it again. And he's like, play this deck, play it smart. If you have your things, stay in. If you don't, retreat.
Yep.
And it was so hard to be disciplined about it, but having somebody to report back to, like, had a little Glazer on my shoulder telling me, like, don't stay in. I know you're curious, but don't do it. It's not smart. Uh, and so I kind of like I find it a more boring way to play, but that's how I've made it to infinite every season since. It's just like, okay, I'm in boring mode right now. And if I get sick of boring
That's
mode, I have to go to conquest and be silly for a little bit.
yep. Yeah, that's a great look at it. I've had Glazer's fantastic. Glazer is on my show. He volunteered to come on, and I'm like, man, that's awesome. When he reached out to me, I'm like, really? Glazer wants to come on. I'm like, wow. But yeah, I love what he does. He does some amazing stuff. But yeah, you're 100% right, and that's why I switched to Conquest because I'm like, I don't. When that happened, I'm like, I don't want the pressure. I just want to mess around. I want to play. If I lose, who cares? If I win the match, great. But like you were saying too, and I know there's people who like Conquest and dislike it for different reasons. People I think that are casuals don't necessarily like it as much because it's not as fast. You have to sit for 20
Mhm.
minutes to play a game, or maybe sometimes more. It depends. So that kind of goes against the whole thing with Snap, where most of the time you're playing a game in 2 minutes, 3 minutes, and you're done. But yeah, and the RNG thing. When you're playing on ladder, it's RNG. It's a lot of it is who gets what. Like we were talking early in the show. Is this guy playing Destroy and did he get Bar Sinister? If he did, I'm done. I'm just leaving.
Bye.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm just leaving. So and one of the things I found, and I laugh about this because I'm a night owl. I stay up late most of the time, and that's a lot of times when I play Marvel Snap because I come home from work and I'm kind of unwinding, and then I'll play some games of Snap. Well, a lot of times I'll start to play. It's 11 o'clock, it's 11:30, and then I look at the clock. It gets to be like 1 a.m, and I'm still trying to play. That is when I will tank. I will start going on major losing streaks, and it's like, stop playing and go to bed.
Yeah.
It's like, don't keep doing this to yourself. And then I look at the clock, and before you know it, now it's 2 a.m. And I'm like, oh my God, why did I not just put the game down and just go to sleep? And then I'm telling people, I'm like, I don't know. Does this get harder? Like, am I playing harder opponents at nighttime? Like, is it a different time? No, stupid. It's because you're tired and you really shouldn't be playing now
Your
anyway.
brain's not there.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
I have started describing the climb to infinite, and then also I almost never play since they've added the ranking. Once you hit infinite, it used to be you could just keep climbing. You could reach rank 200, which hardly anybody did, but you could. Um, and now you get a completely different number. Once you hit infinite, you get the
Yes.
number that represents your global rank,
Rank.
and
Yep.
1 is the best number now, not the highest number possible.
Yep.
Um, I don't find that leaderboard competition very interesting, and so
Yeah.
typically I just go to conquest, or else infinity is or infinite rank is like my playground.
Yeah.
But for one season, I decided I'm going to try climbing. I'm just going to see what this is like to be competitive and to climb. And I climbed from 99,000 to 996.
Oh,
A
wow. Okay.
big climb.
Yeah.
Um, which Admittedly, getting to like 3,000 was pretty fast. But after that, it was quite grindy. Um, and like the lesson I took from that is climbing in ladder, whether that's trying to get to infinite or trying to hit 90 for the gold, or competing on the global leaderboard. It's just a measure of how long you can be disciplined with your
Yes.
snapping and retreating.
Yeah.
And you really kind of have to be robotic about it. I know you've talked about some of the Lambie videos before, and
Yes.
his are so helpful. It's
They
like you
are.
have to take the emotion out of it, and sometimes you do just get a bad luck streak, and you have to retreat for the sixth time, and that feels bad. And you're like, I've retreated the last 5 games. This game
Yep.
should be a winner, and it's like, no, you're just as likely to match into something as you
Yep.
were the last 5 games. Like,
Yep.
if you're on a bad streak, it's better to have lost 6 cubes over 6 games than to lose 14, like, or I
Yep.
guess 15. 13 math. Um anyway, so that's like my takeaway. Like, if you're trying to climb, you do have to learn some skills. You do have to learn the game. You have to understand the meta a little bit. You have to learn how to identify decks. You have to learn when your deck is doing its thing, and you snap when your deck is doing its thing.
Yep.
And I've started thinking, and this is a Lambieism, I've started thinking like, it's my deck that's snapping and retreating. It's not me. It's my deck.
Yes.
If it's doing its thing, if things are in the right state, I snap. If things are in a bad state, I retreat.
Yep.
And it's really just, you have to be disciplined. And if you're not in the mental state to be disciplined, go play a different game mode.
That's yeah, yeah. I compare it to when I was younger, like in my teens or so, myself and a couple other friends started to play poker, and it is very similar to poker in that respect.
Yes.
It's like the old Kenny Rogers song. You got to know when to hold them and know when to fold them, and it's very similar. Except in poker, there's real money at stake. So it's almost funny. Like, could you imagine if you're playing Snap and you're playing each game for money? And it's almost like you have to think of it that way. Do I want to lose like $10 on this game? Would I want to lose this right now with what I have in my hand? And if you use that mentality, it's like, yeah, that you'll play better. I had Gunny T on my show this past week or so. He seems like he wants to approach what he does that way, and I think it's great. I think it's great to listen to folks like you, and people like that who want to, and Lambie, of course, who want to talk more about the psychology of the game, and they want to talk more about, okay, these are the kind of things that you need to do, because I think a lot of people would get a lot from that, in the, especially like people that are just kind of coming into the game, knowing that, all right, this is the way that you should do this, because if you don't, you're not going to enjoy it. You're going to lose a lot. And, but then I get on the other side of it, like you said, it's okay to lose. And that's what I think you're right. This game, I think you just want to win. You naturally just want to win games. And when you know that part of playing Marvel Snap is you just can't, and you just have to know when to leave. So it's very interesting.
Yeah. I've seen, going into Snap Zone stats, I've seen players who climb to infinite, or who have very good performing decks, and they have win rates below 50%. And it's like, those kind of decks are like the Hella decks or the negative decks, where it's
Yeah,
like,
the
when they
wombo
do their
combo
thing,
deck.
they do it big,
Yep.
and when you don't do your thing, you retreat. Those are the ones that have high cube rates but low win rates,
Yep.
because they're easy to identify the snap and retreat patterns. Which I also, by the way, think those are great decks for learning the game, because
Yeah.
knowing your snap and retreat patterns is critical.
Yep.
Yeah, I know that it can be really disheartening to be on Twitter and to see like everybody who, like, first week infinite or 24 hours infinite, it was really easy, the easiest one forever,
Yes.
played tons of bots. Like,
Yes.
it can be so discouraging, and you go and play their same deck, and it just like takes you nowhere.
Yep.
And so I know I haven't been perfect at this, but I try to be sensitive to that, because I spent 5-ish months as a player who couldn't hit infinite, and I know what it's like to tank your rank a ton, and I know how discouraging it is to see players who you think are like, your peers, they can
Yep.
get to infinite easily, and you're like, what's wrong with me?
Yep.
But I really think it's a skill in learning how to think of the game in a different way. You're exactly
Yep.
right. We're inclined to want to win every game, and that's not what winning in Snap is. Winning in Snap is winning over the long term,
Yes.
having a positive cube game.
Yep. Yeah, it's great. I get comments on Twitter from people saying that, hey, It's nice to hear from somebody that isn't hitting infinite every single month and not
Yeah.
good. And they're right. Like I started watching the bigger creators. I wanted to get ideas and tips on decks and all that kind of stuff. But what you got to realize, and this is when I started to kind of think to it of it in this way too. When you're a casual player, like myself, I work 9 to 10 to 5, 9 to 5 every single day. I come home, I've got family stuff that I do, and this and that, and so when you just have an hour or two a day, I think sometimes you got to rationalize it to yourself when you're watching a creator and they make it look so simple, but they're playing for 5 hours sometimes in a
Hmm.
clip. So sure, like you were saying, exactly, it's a long haul. And if you're playing over the course of 4 to 5 hours, that long haul, they're going to lose too. A lot of times, maybe you don't see that in their videos because they're cutting the losses out. Some of them don't, and some of them show it, which I think is great. But they're still playing probably way more than people are that can just play an hour or two a day. So of course it's going to be difficult, and I think people need to realize that, and that's why I try to bring that to light here, because it's like I get you, I totally understand that, but yeah, it's you have to realize that when you're seeing, like you said, all that stuff on Twitter or wherever you're seeing it, it's not everybody, and not everybody can do that.
Yeah, I mean, you have to think like if your cube rate is positive but low, let's say like a 0.1, something like that cube rate, you can play what, 20 games an hour or something like that. That means you're getting two cubes every hour. Like you will hit infinite eventually, but you have to play a lot to do that. And some of those players, like you're talking about, the ones who, the creators, they play so much more. Some of them who are getting the first week infinite, they may be playing more in the first week than you play in the entire season.
100%. 100%. Yep, absolutely. I love this. I didn't even get to a slide, and I didn't have to. This is fantastic. What a great conversation. Um, I'm going to keep you for like another 9 minutes if that's cool, and we'll just kind of wrap
Yeah,
this up. I don't want to keep you all day. I know you've probably got things to do.
I
But one of
don't. We could go
oh,
longer if you
oh,
want.
all right. Hey, cool. I'm fine with talking. All right, cool. Let's get into we've got a new season obviously starting. So the discard season, which I'm sure you're probably not necessarily a huge fan of this because of what's coming up, but not necessarily all the cards are going to be discard. I'm kind of digging it because of the lore of this whole thing, because I'm a big Thanos fan. I've got like the big Infinity Gauntlet that they came out with, the one that lights up and you can wear it on your hand. I'm big into Thanos. I love the comic book for that, and when he came into the movies, I was absolutely thrilled to see him on a big screen. So we have the Black Order this month, so it's all of the children of Thanos. And I am not. There we go. Hey, okay. We've got, and these have been changed. So a lot of this stuff has been updated and changed. I think a lot of people are kind of surprised. I don't know about you, but I don't know why people get surprised by data mines anymore. I mean, data mines are
Right.
data mines. Like, why are you expecting data mines to be exactly 100% how they were data mined? They're not going to probably release that way.
Yeah.
But this looks like it's going to be a discard season. Now, Black Swan, of course, is a season pass card. She comes out today. So are you excited for Black Swan? I would imagine you might be, because of what you were
Hmm.
saying to me that you like. This is going to be a big discard card, or not discard. This is going to be a big, like small cards card,
Uh,
like Hit Monkey and stuff like
yeah.
that. It's going to go really well with Bounce. So are you excited about the season pass today?
I'm very excited about Black
Tomorrow,
Swan. She
not
and
today, tomorrow.
yeah, she and Supergiant, which I think is the next one we'll look at, are the two that are the most interesting to me. They have the most like creative deck building potential in my mind. Um, Black Swan, I think some people will be like, will Zoo finally be okay? But I don't think Kyera brought Zoo back, so I don't
Mhm.
know if Black Swan will either. Um, Certainly possible. Like one costs tend to have better stats, like more efficient stats than most cards,
Yep.
right? Like a 1/2 would be a 6/12. That's pretty good. Um, but that's just energy efficiency. You also have to think about card efficiency. Like, okay, so I can drop 7 1 drops on the last turn. What does that accomplish for me?
Yep.
Um, but yeah, I think she's going to be really fun. I think there are some one cost that you can do some clever things with for sure.
Yeah.
Not just hit monkey. I think like flooding the board with, I don't know, I have to go to my Valkyrie, like Ant-Man pairing with Valkyrie, saving that for the last turn instead of leaving him vulnerable on the board forever. It's pretty exciting to me.
I had an amazing Valkyrie play with Grandmaster. It was the coolest thing I've ever seen. I'm like, am I gonna get this to work? And it was the only way I could have beaten a person because they had me beat in both the middle and the right lane, pretty with a lot of big power. But I had more cards than they did in both lanes, so I was able to
Oh
Valkyrie
heck
the one
yeah!
lane, bounce her to the middle, and Valkyrie the middle lane. It was awesome. I'm like, this is fantastic. That's a great card. I think it's a really, really underappreciated card for how good it is.
Such a fun
Especially
card.
it really is, especially when you get metas like this, when everybody wants to just go big on every single thing and they're playing all these huge creatures and stuff there. It's yeah, I think it's a really, really fun card. Great variants too. I love the Peach Momoko variant of Valkyrie. It's so
Hmm.
good. It's so good.
Yeah, people always ask me what my favorite is because I'm like very openly like Valkyrie's my favorite card.
Yep.
Kind of like everybody knows what your favorite card is.
Yes. Oh,
Um,
I no doubt. Yes.
It's like I don't really like the art germs. I'm like I've heard Glazer talk about this too, where like he loves the Dan Hips. It's like I want my comic book cards to look like comic books, not realistic.
Yes.
The art
Yes.
germ art is beautiful, but it just doesn't feel like comic book characters to me.
They're like portraits. It's almost like he
Uh-huh.
does like portrait pictures of characters. Yeah, yeah, I get that. There's a lot of people that are very on the fence with that. They either love them or it's like, yeah, it's kind of not for me. Even the comic book covers that he did are the same way. I've had people that are comic collectors are like, yeah, they don't do anything for me. So yeah, yep,
Yeah.
totally get
So I
that.
mean, I finally did pick up the art germ because we have character mastery coming, and I'm like, I'm gonna get all the Valkyries now. So
Yep.
I still have to get baby Valkyrie whenever that shows up. But
You'll be
like, I love the Rian Gonzalez. I love the Peach Momoko, but my Valkyrie that I run all the time is Pixel Valkyrie.
Yes. I love the Pixel Valkyrie actually. That you know what? It's so funny. I'm gonna start doing and I got inspired by the Kid Snap. I love those guys. They're hilarious. They do like 80s themed kind of stuff and it's great. But they do this game on their show, and I said, you know what, I need to come up with a gimmick like that. So I'm gonna do a guest a pixel game at some point on my show. And I'm like, because everybody hates pixels. Which I mean, when you grew up with like we were talking about earlier, you grew up with like Nintendo stuff, and you said it's like it's not so bad. That's how they looked on the screen when you could,
Yeah.
back in the day. But yeah, I was so excited when the Pixel Galactus came out until I saw like he looked like he got punched in the face. When you
Yeah,
look at
that
the right
one.
side, it looks like he's has a big either a wad of gum in his mouth or like the
Yeah.
face is so bad. Oh man, that's great.
So what I always remind people with the Pixel ones is they were done by G Angle, who that's an entire studio. So people are like, why are the Pixels? I mean, some people just hate them universally. I'm much more
Yes.
like they're hit and miss. Some of them are amazing, some of them are
Mhm.
bad, some of them are so bad they're good. And
Yes. Hell cow.
they really are like it's there are a bunch of different artists because they're all from the same studio.
Yep.
And I think Valkyrie is one of the very good ones.
Yeah, Valkyrie's a cool one. You know which one I love, and I just got it maybe 3 weeks ago. Jubilee. Jubilee's
Mm,
pixels amazing. When I looked
yeah,
at
that
them, like
one's
it looks.
very retro game.
Oh my gosh, it reminded me of like well, like I said, I'm a big Final Fantasy guy. So when I looked at that, I'm like, wow, this looks like Final Fantasy like 5 or 4 or 5, like the graphics from that. I'm like, yeah, it's literally one of my favorite ones. I love it. So um all right, so Black Swan, yeah, I think I think she's gonna be a good card. I think you're gonna see a lot of people using, like you were saying, maybe they'll try Zoo out, maybe they'll go to Bounce. I know Bounce is always kind of a go-to for a lot of people. People even playing like a Nihilist Bounce right now. That's a big deck that's out there. So
Yeah, I think she's gross and balanced. You can either do uh like on turn 5, you could do Falcon Black Swan. We should say Black Swan's a 3/5 now.
yep.
You mentioned that she changed, but I don't know if we said. But like Black Swan's like I'm gonna bring back all my one costs and then make them free.
Yep.
Or if you did um Black Swan before you dropped all your ones and then drop them and then the turn that you're dropping them for free, you can use Beast to pick them right back up and then they're free again. Like,
Yeah, that's
yeah,
sick.
she seems
It's
really
sick.
probably too good in bounce. I don't think there's any way she survives as a 3/5.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, they changed her, didn't they? Yeah, they did.
Yeah,
Yeah, I think I have the updated ones too. I had all the other. Oh, there's a Rian Gonzalez, by the way. That I
it's
think
so
that
good.
it is so good. That comes out this month.
I love that Elias.
I do too. I think that's it's he the stuff he does is so much fun. Let me see if I have the updated one.
Rian is a woman.
Oh, is it? Oh, yeah, I'm sorry. Yeah, you're right. Yes, that's right. There we go. That's the right. That's the updated one. Yes, I think so. Yeah.
Yeah. Yep.
Okay.
3/5.
All right. There we go. Yes. So yeah, so Black Swan is an interesting card. I'm going to talk about her lore a little bit later. She appeared in like an Dark Avengers comic. I think was the first time that I ever saw her. She wasn't in the Infinity Gauntlet comics. So she's a more recently
Yeah,
developed
she's
character. Yeah.
new to the Black Order, right? Or
Yeah.
newer.
Yes. Yes, absolutely. And then we have is Supergiant today as well, I think.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yes. So we have Supergiant as well. This I'm thinking to myself, well, this is going to bring Eliath back. That there's
Yep.
if people aren't playing Eliath now, they're going to once Supergiant releases. So you don't get to reveal those cards, and that's exactly what Eliath wants, because you play Eliath, they can't reveal the cards they played the turn before, and they're all getting eaten by Eliath on the last turn if they have priority. So, what do you think of Supergiant?
She is the hardest read this season for me.
Okay.
I think that there's a real risk that she's going to be like a grandmaster where everybody thinks she's awesome, and then it turns out that she's kind of like too much work to do. Of course, 4/5 is a lot more usable than 2/0. I mean, not like flexibility wise, but like when she whiffs, like at least decent stats.
Yep.
Plus, with Zabu, she's even cheaper. Yeah, so I think using her offensively is super interesting. And yeah, that's Eliath. And then the other ones I've been thinking of are Taskmaster, Absorbing Man, and Mystique, because you then play them face down on 5 and they'll copy whatever you play on 6, which is that's kind of cool.
Yeah.
And then of course Valkyrie on 5 I think is also kind of interesting. But saving her until the end of the game, because she's stronger at the end of the game.
Yep.
And I guess you could do that with like an Enchantress and Shang-Chi and like all the ones that are stronger when they get to go last.
Yes.
But she's also really strong as a defensive card. She ruins Sarah, she ruins Leech. Finally, we have something that counters Leech.
Oh, I know.
You're gonna mess up MODOK. Like,
yes.
However, her ability changed because it was originally until the end of next turn. So like if you had priority, you could mess up your opponent's current turn and the next turn. Like you could catch them off guard. And now it's like only the following turn. So your opponent always knows when she's active. So it's not like you're going to be able to completely obliterate the MODOKs in quite the same way, like surprise them, force them to mess up their MODOK. They will know that their MODOK has been messed up.
Yep.
And that's where I'm just like, I don't know, like it's great to have a Leech counter, but they know it's a Leech counter, so they just won't play their Leech.
They won't play it. Yep. 100%.
So just like, I don't.
Yeah.
I'm interested to see how she pans out, and definitely I'm interested in using her in creative ways.
Yeah, you're starting to see more people, and I even tried it. Is mess around with Ghost since the patch, since the OTA. So because important to get that to be able to flip first sometimes, and Supergiant definitely actually helps that. But yeah, the Leech counter thing's a great shout. I wouldn't have necessarily thought of that, but that's a great shout. And so many people are playing it now. Leech is in. Like Leech was in High Evo, I get it. It's been in there for a while, but now you're seeing Leech in so many other decks, and Leech is annoying.
I am not a fan.
Yeah, no, I'm not either. It's sometimes you get to sneak away with it, depending on what you have in your hand, and then if you grab a last card and the last card is actually pretty good, you can kind of sneak by. But yeah, Leeches, and I get it. I know they said that it's there because it tries to keep things in check, and I get that. But yeah, it's such an obnoxious card.
He's a release valve. But so like Supergiant is a release valve for the release valve.
Oh man. Yeah, I love it. All right, Corvus. These are your discard cards. Unrevealed discard cards from your hand to get +1 max energy. So obviously, discard decks are going to love this card. The more energy you get, the quicker you can do stuff. I don't know whether he goes traditional discard or whether they go hella with this guy because of the energy and stuff like that that they're getting. But either way, stat line's good, 3/5. Getting energy is a good thing. So he probably will be pretty good in discard decks.
Yeah, and I think Black Knight, the third one after, Hela
Yes, after
and
hella. Yep.
I think Black Knight will like this card.
Yep.
This is another one I don't totally get because, like, you don't see discard currently ever running Electro or Wave, so I don't know how much discard cares about that extra
Mm,
energy. But I don't know. I mean, in some ways, it's better Hell Cow, right? Like, you sacrifice 3 power, but you get an extra energy.
yes. Yeah.
It's just,
Yeah.
in a deck that likes discarding things, I could definitely see this being good.
Yeah, yeah, no doubt. Yeah, absolutely. He's a cool character. I liked him in the MCU and in the comics. He was always like he's like Thanos's kind of right hand guy.
Mm.
So yeah, I kind of like it. And next one, Cull Obsidian. 410 can only play this where you have a 1 cost card, which doesn't really seem like it's a big deal. I mean, again, you look at the ones that call for the big power, like if you're playing Black Knight's a 1 cost, it would be in there anyway. But this to me probably the least exciting, I think, card of the month. Yeah. What do you think?
I agree. It's the least exciting. It used to have ongoing can't be destroyed.
Yes.
Um, Probably good that it lost that. Like, if you look at the other 410s, they have drawbacks.
Yep.
Um, Atuma and Typhoid Mary, and
Typhoid
they're
Mary.
they're drawbacks that you can manage. I'd say Sentry is the only one that's like, if you build around Sentry, then his negative is actually a positive,
Yep.
right? There's some cool things you can do with the Void. Um, the thing that flipped me the most on Cold Obsidian is that Glenn actually answered that you can play the 1 cost on the same turn as Cole. And that makes him quite a bit better because he
Oh,
can
okay.
be more flexible that way. You're not tied into a location. If you have a 1 cost in your hand on turn 5 or 6, you can play the 1 cost and then Cole.
And
And
Cole.
that makes him quite a bit better, I think.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. Definitely. That's not bad. Yeah. Yeah. Why not a turn 5 play and playing 2 cards, and you're going to get 10 and whatever that one happens to be on the board. So yeah. Okay. Yeah. That's not too bad. Cull Obsidian, of course, is the guy that was killed. A lot of the Black Order died in the movies. They
Yeah.
didn't really stick around very long. This poor guy got his arm chopped off in one of Doctor Strange's portals, and then he also just got killed by getting sent up into the Shield in Wakanda. So he didn't survive very long. But yeah, another big heavy bad guy with high powered stats to deal with. Proxima Midnight. When this is discarded, jumps to your I can't see the words over it. Jumps to your lowest power location that isn't full. Oh boy, this could be. I don't know. What do you think? The traditional discard here, almost. I think you can use this in.
Yeah, I think this is really good. I think most discard decks are gonna want her. Maybe. I mean, she's better than Wolverine. She's better than Meek, right? Like,
Yes.
those are the
Yep.
ones that Wolverine is the one you discard and get for free.
Yep.
Um, so she does that, and then Meek is the one, like the discard card that helps you reach a hard to reach location. Maybe
Yes.
she's not in Hela because Hela can reach hard to reach locations. Um, but in the other two, in traditional and in Black Knight, I think she'll be there.
Yeah.
Being able to just jump a 7 power card into,
Oh my
like,
gosh.
I don't know, Big House or Sanctum Sanctorum, like,
Sanctum.
that's really good.
Yeah, it is.
She was a 4/6 before, now she's a 4/7. Like, those stats are ridiculous.
Yeah, they are. Yeah, for sure. They
And
definitely
yeah,
are.
like, in a deck that's running MODOK, like, you're always gonna get her, and she jumps more intelligently than Wolverine too. Wolverine's random. Like, she's just like, I'm gonna go fill that location that you're losing.
I mean, imagine, yeah, like you said, you're playing Modok on turn 5. Most of the time they do it with the apocalypse and everything in the swarms, but now you're going to get a 7. You're going to get 7 power that's going to jump to a location on your board,
Right. Yeah,
which is
your MODOK play is 15 power
it's kind of
just
insane.
that turn.
Yeah, that's kind of insane. And then not to mention you're going to get loads of swarms in your hand that can be played for free on your next turn, and then an apocalypse that's pretty big. So yeah, this may very well bring, you may see traditional discard come back, and not just the Black Knight or Hella versions. So yeah, she's going to be a very, very strong card. So um this is nope, that's the patch. Um, well, you know what? Let me talk about this real quick too with you. So this is Nina's. I love Nina. What she does with these, they're
Hmm.
fantastic. What did you think of the balance update? I thought that it was cool. I mean, the Luke Cage thing was cool. I'm glad that kind of happened because high Evo negative and a lot of that kind of negative stuff has been running wild for a little bit. So that's kind of going to slow that down. It gives me a chance to play Man Thing. Man Thing, one of my favorite characters in
Hmm.
Marvel ever. Now I'll get a chance to play him again, maybe in certain decks. But what did you think of this overall? We had Ghost, got changed, went to a 3/5. Spider-Man 2099, I don't know if that's still going to be used at a 5/9. Luke Cage is a 3/4 now, which was awesome. Hulkbuster, this one, they had mentioned that they're seeing too much destroy. This isn't going to stop that. And in fact, I think someone did the math, it escapes me now. I was listening to a podcast that they did, and they talked about doing the math on it. This actually helps Deadpool discard, because they did all the math and how high Deadpool can end up getting, and of course that's all selective and everything like that. But they came up with a thing saying that this actually helps instead of hurts. And then of course we got Heimdall. Heimdall just needed a little bump, and I don't think that's too bad. But what did you think of the OTAs overall?
Yeah, Heimdall totally obvious. Like that would make sense. Keep him
Yeah.
safe from Shang, but 6/8 has always been kind of weak.
Yep.
Um, Hulkbuster, yes, Deadpool's ceiling is higher now, but that's because playing Hulkbuster early lets you get more destroys in later.
Yes.
So it's like you have to have the perfect draw to make Deadpool better now than he used to be. But
Mhm.
still, like, and I think Glenn even answered that, where it's like we think that making it more efficient on curve isn't enough to balance out how much weaker it is. And I'm like, I don't know. I thought it was
Yeah.
interesting that we heard Deadpool was the strongest destroy deck. I don't know if I would have guessed that before they
Yep.
said so.
Yep.
Um, Ghost, I think Ghost is just a hard card. Like it's an interesting power, but most of the decks that want to go second, they can go second just by playing smart.
Yep.
And then Eliath makes guaranteeing going second scary
Yep.
now. As much as I've used Eliath because it's a great card, it's my least favorite card in the game. It completely changed like the rules of the game, right? Like it used to be going second is the stronger position, and there were
Yes.
cards who could take advantage of going first. Um, you're maybe it's just Juggernaut at this point. It used to be Arrow. Um, I don't know. There must be others, but there are some cards that benefit from going first. But it wasn't so decisive, right? And Goliath is like so decisive
Oh,
and
no doubt.
makes it just like completely and you don't know if your opponent's playing Goliath. So it's just like, is going second the stronger position? I don't know. Um, and I guess that's the part that I like the least is that one player knows if going second is the stronger, but the other one doesn't. Agreed. Yeah, 2099. I understand they want to try to make a different type of move deck, but I don't think 5/9 is enough
Mm,
to make him worth playing. And then Luke, I'm so mixed on because offensively, I think he's great. Like,
yep.
or even defensively. I guess when you're the one playing Luke, he's great. You get to counter things like High Evo. It makes Man Thing and Hazmat quite a bit more playable.
Yep.
Um, but I kind of feel like 3 is still too cheap for his ability when you're on the other side. Like he's so decisive, and you can drop him
Mm.
on the last turn as a surprise. Um, yeah, I don't know how I feel about Luke yet. And of course, part of it is he's very anti Valkyrie, and I love Valkyrie.
That is
But
true.
um, but I like it when Man Thing and Hazmat can be playable, and it's not like they've suddenly become top tier decks, right? Like they're
Yeah.
just. But it was very hard for them to deal with Luke being a single lane.
Yeah, yeah, no doubt, no doubt. Yeah, I don't know. I've seen people trying to play 2099. I did play against a couple move decks that were trying to play him with Ghost Spider and then move him again with Heimdall and stuff like that. But both times I beat the deck, and it was like, yeah, I just think it's clunky, and I don't think people are going to play with it that much. Ghost.
Yeah.
Ghost always intrigued me as an on reveal mostly player, especially when I was playing Galactus. I thought, oh, this is going to be great. Now I could definitely go first. But like you said, it's not that big of a deal because if you're playing right, you can time that out anyway, and it's not something you really need to do. But yeah, Luke
It's just
Cage
the
is
opposite. She makes sure you always go second.
second, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, so yeah, I mean it's yeah, so I don't know. It's not necessarily a card that I think is going to get played now that it was given that improvement. But Luke Cage was definitely the standout card in this. There's
Yes.
no doubt about that. So um, there's a big I'm going to just put up these really quickly because we have if I get the right slide, hopefully. Where did you go? Oh, the card. I love these.
Hmm.
I love the card backs from this month. I think they're phenomenal. Although I would have wanted
Awesome.
this one. I would have hoped that this one would have been a gold one, but I guess I could see why they did. It would have been too much gold
It's
on gold.
already gold.
Yeah, it would
Yeah.
have been too much
Um,
gold on gold.
that
But
one's
I,
gonna look awesome in 3D.
oh my gosh, yeah, no doubt. Yeah, the
Yeah.
Infinity Gauntlet. Yeah, absolutely love it. This is the conquest card that you get for the month of Gamora, so that's kind of cool. Oh, and these are the locations that they're going to have Sanctuary 2. Of course, that's Thanos' ship. Add a random Infinity Stone to your hand. Yeah, it's weird. It's a little like a little bit of a weird one here. I guess it could be good. It depends on what stone you get. But you get the purple stone that does nothing.
Yeah.
That there's certain ones that,
It's
yeah,
a
okay,
1/3. That's like something, but
yeah,
yeah.
yeah. I mean, it's kind of cool, but it's really going to be RNG dependent. Black Vortex, the first card you play here becomes a random 6 cost card. This could kind of be a little insane,
Yeah.
depending on what the RNG is like. You could end up with a fantastic 6 card, or you can end up with garbage, depending on what it is. But these both seem like they're going to be kind of fun, I guess. I mean, if you're a Thanos player and you get Sanctuary 2, it's just giving you an extra stone, I guess. So it's not really
Yeah.
going to hurt you at all. So, what do you think of that? While we're on that subject, what do you think of Thanos overall? I know it's huge. It's been big since Blob. It doesn't look like it's going anywhere anytime soon. Some of these cards help the Thanos deck as well. So, I mean, what do you think of Thanos in the meta? A lot of people are kind of
I
even
mean,
talking about him that they want to see it changed a little bit or depowered a little bit, but I don't even know how you would do it. They've already nerfed some of the stones, but what do you think of Thanos?
he's probably my favorite big bad.
Okay.
I mean, High Evo is also very interesting, but obnoxious to play against. Um, somebody pointed out once, I don't know if it's ever been explicitly stated, but that the big bads break. Of course, they don't ever drop series, but that's
Yes.
kind of irrelevant now. Like, is Jeff ever going to drop series?
Yeah, it is.
Um, but the big bads, the thing that they do most interestingly is they like break the fundamental rules of the game,
Yep.
right? And I mean, in a way, every card breaks the rule of the game, right? Like that's what cards with abilities do. Is hey, here's a way that you can do something that's against the rules. But uh, Kang makes it so it's not a 6-turn game. Galactus makes it so it's not a 3-location game. Thanos makes it so it's not a 12-card deck.
Yep.
Um, I think they're super cool that way.
Yep.
Um, yeah, Thanos I think is the most interesting, and I think he also has the most deck building potential. Like,
Mm.
we've seen a lot of different Thanos decks. Um, Thanos Lockjaw probably needs to be adjusted. Um, I don't know. Thanos is funny because he's been nerfed like 3 times, and every time people are like, "Oh, he's dead," and then he comes back.
Comes right
He's
back.
doing just fine.
Yep.
Like, uh, like Soulstone losing its on reveal. Like, yeah, that really hurt Thanos decks, but also it doesn't seem like it hurt them enough,
Yep.
um, or
Yep.
at least not enough to kill it. I think he was the first big bad that I got. I was not like
Was
you.
he?
I never drew a Series 5 card from the collection track when that was possible.
I've gotten a few. I'm trying to think back now because like I said, Galactus was the first one, but I had a decent amount of them, surprisingly enough. I never, I usually luck and me aren't one and the same. Even when I was playing Magic and stuff like that, to draw like a super rare or rare card was, few and far between for me, but I got a few of them. But yeah, yeah, I agree. I don't know. I don't know if there's anything you could do with him. Tell me about Lockjaw because I feel the same way you do. Lockjaw, how do you fix that? How can you fix that card? Because they already tried. They tried to
Yeah.
mess around with it a little bit, but to me, it just still is in decks like this. And obviously now it's in the Thors. So the Thors deck is out there now with Lockjaw. The card, yes, it's a hit or miss. I get it. You're gambling. It's you're gambling. It's not going to be a one drop at some point, or you're gambling. It's going to be a high drop. But I don't know. Like, what would you do with other than to me at this point? They'd have to rework the card. I think.
You could try making it a 4 cost.
Mm,
And then it's like they either get one less draw or they have to run Zabu, which is now a bad thing to come out of Lockjaw.
yep.
It might kill Lockjaw, honestly, to make him a 4 cost. And you can always tune power, but I don't think Lockjaw's ever winning because of his 2 power. I mean, I shouldn't say ever. Obviously happens sometimes, but I don't know. He's a really fun card, and he's got like, thematically very cool ability.
Yep.
But yeah, the decks they can run so top heavy and
Yep.
perform just fine.
Yep. Yep. No doubt.
I don't yeah, it might have to be a rework. Maybe he turns into like a Tarnax 4, where you play a card there and it turns into a random card. He warps in
Mm,
something from outside your deck.
yeah.
Um, which could still be useful, right? Like I was going to ask because
Oh,
of
no
Black
doubt.
Vortex, what you think about Tarnax, because I know some people hate Tarnax. I love Tarnax, but I mostly play cheap cards that do cool things, or low power cards that do cool things. So it's like I get to do my cool thing and then turn into a card with more power.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, the thing with Lockjaw is he's very comic accurate. He teleports
Hmm.
people. That's exactly what he
Right.
does. So he's teleporting cards from your deck. So he's very, very comic book accurate. So I really don't know. I don't know how it thinks. I mean, the one thing I was thinking is because he's inhuman, you can have him bring in a random inhuman card. So like a
Mm,
Black Bolt or a Medusa
yeah.
or
Quake.
yeah, like the Inhumans could get brought. So I don't know. Maybe if they wanted to do something different with him, but yeah, I don't know. I know it's a card that a lot of people have. They're either they're up and down, up or down on, depending upon what's popular at what time. But he still goes back. He comes back. Like he goes away for a little bit, then he'll show
Hmm.
back up again when something else comes out. So it's an
Yep.
interesting question. Um, we also, along with the new card releases, obviously tomorrow and the season pass starting, we have a big patch coming up this week, like the supposedly an actual gameplay patch, where they're gonna not just do like their normal things to the cards and stuff like that, but this is supposed to be content for that they may have talked about on the roadmap or something else that's coming out this week, at least from what I've heard. So I brought this up and I want to talk to you a little bit about this because this was a sticking point for me when this first came out. When they brought this whole album thing into play, I remember they were talking about the emotes, and they got everybody excited about the emotes. Oh, look at all these emotes! You saw them at Comic-Con, and everybody was like, "Oh, this is going to be amazing! I could have all these emotes." And then they bring out the albums, and the albums are all cards that are usually, now the Dan Hips and some of the Jim Lee ones were 700 price, but for the most part, a lot of these albums are all 1200 price variants, and these, as of right now, are the only way you can pull those emotes by completing these albums. So they did say they were working on them. And I don't know, maybe these are some. Now I do see some pixels up here, so that's kind of cool. A pixel discarder, pick a destroy. So obviously they're themed pixels. And then low cost, high impact. So Nebula, I guess these are all low cost cards. So what did you think of albums in general? I mean, they're for collectors, obviously, you know, the variant collectors and stuff like that. And we talked about the economy earlier. But what do you think about these? Are they good for the game? Is it something you even care about? Like for me, it's like, do I care or not? If they come out with a Galactus one, I'm going to want it. But other than that, favorite cards and stuff, it's not something that I really am that concerned about. So what do you think of albums?
I think they are a clever way to monetize whales. I
Oh,
think one
yep.
of the problems that they have with monetizing cosmetics, which I see people be upset that like, oh, we get so much less gold now. And it's like, yeah, but it's also like it should be a good thing that they're monetizing the monetization has shifted towards cosmetics and away from content,
Yep.
right? That should be good for everybody. And yes, as a free to play player, you can't get as many cosmetics, but you're getting more new cards. That should be a good swap. Uh, and then I think they have the problem that people get one cool variant for a card and they don't need any more. Like the Conquest Gamora, she's awesome, but I already have two Gamora
Yeah.
variants that I love.
Yep. Yep.
Uh, so I mean, I'll still play Conquest, but you know, if she was coming out as a gold card or a bundle, I wouldn't be motivated by the variant itself because I already have a Gamora variant that I love. Um, and I guess that's something that character mastery does too, because you get mastery for splits, but you get more mastery for new variants. So that's another way that you're motivating people to get multiple variants for the same card. Um, so mostly with my attitude that it's like it's a good thing that they're monetizing cosmetics. I should be happy with albums because that's what they're doing, and I can just look at them and be like, those aren't for me, or I will complete them in very slow motion, and maybe in like a year, I will randomly get variants to get a few rewards here and there. But I am personally sad that the emotes are all locked behind albums because I
Yeah.
love emotes.
Yeah. I mean, yep.
I
Yep.
don't know that emotes should be a whale thing, but also they're cosmetics. So I kind of have to like practice what I preach there and be like, even though it's sad for me, I have to be happy that they're not monetizing content instead.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, that's a good point. I think at some point they should just they should just put in a pack of emotes for people. Even
Yeah,
if it's $5 and let people get like 4 emotes for $5 or something like that. Then that I think maybe might make people a little bit happy about it. But yeah, you're right. I mean, need to hide them all behind these things, and they're not easy. I have the Dan Hip one completed. That's the only one I've gotten, but that was because I had a whole bunch of them to start with for whatever reason. But yeah, I don't know. I agree. I think it's cool and everything. It's a collection thing, like you said. And it definitely is generated toward people who are going to spend because some of those some of the people I couldn't believe it because I spent a good amount of money on this, but and I would designate myself as probably being a whale, but yet I've seen people who got that gala one and had it done in like the first day. I'm like, oh my
yeah. I
god,
mean,
it's a lot.
you've got Super Tech God whose variant complete. It's just
Yep.
incredible to not
It's
only get that
crazy.
point, but then to maintain it.
Oh,
Yeah,
he has every variant, really?
he has every single
Oh
variant in the
my
game.
gosh, that's insane. Holy
Yep.
cow. Wow.
Okay, he has every single one except for one. There was the special spectrum that was given out for
Yes.
picking the right winner.
Yep.
He doesn't have that one.
Oh man, that's insane. I
Yeah,
can't even fathom that. Wow, that's nuts. Oh man, but yeah, it's interesting. And yeah, I'm hoping. What else are you hoping for? Like, if they do, if this patch is indeed a big gameplay one, what are you hoping we see? The stuff that we had heard about, like you mentioned some of it already. The character mastery stuff. I mean, I'm excited about that because I know I'm getting something for Galactus. No doubt about that. Am I getting something for that
yeah.
card? But Yeah, I mean, what has you most excited on the horizon for Snap? So whether it be the patch or something else that they've been working on. I know myself, I would love to see a draft mode, but they said that a new game mode is down the road, so who knows when that might be coming around. I just think that would be kind of cool for almost everybody. You could just get into a match and just get random cards and stuff like that given to you and stuff. So what are you looking for from Thursday, if it is indeed a big game update, and even from Snap going forward?
Yeah. So I went and pulled up the development roadmap. Stuff incoming soon should be the only stuff that's possibly coming this patch.
Yep.
We've got mastery, album improvements, in-game events, selectable card effects, selectable borders. I don't know what selectable card effects is if there's selectable borders. Because they've made it pretty clear that like the flare and finishes are locked together.
Mm,
You can't unlock like gold foil on one split and gold crackle on another split and combine
yep.
them. New infinity splits and collectible reactions. The reactions are the ones where you can click on somebody's card and do the
Yes.
emotes.
Yeah. Yeah.
And those seem tied to character mastery. I think that the reactions are adorable. I'm excited for my Valkyrie reactions.
Yeah. Yeah. That'll be awesome.
So I think most excited, at least in that set, character mastery, just because I want to show off that I've split Valkyrie 25 times.
Yep.
I want to show off the super cool space infinity split or whatever. I think
Yep.
new infinity splits I think are a great idea. We've had the same ones forever.
That's true.
Selectable borders will be nice. There are definitely cards that I have not upgraded because I want to keep them at their current border. Coming up, I am most excited for a new game mode, and I don't know how that could not be the most exciting thing.
Yeah.
Like I think clans are awesome. Adding some social element to the game, I think that'll be
Yeah.
really fun. But and things like the in-game graveyard, being able to see that as a mobile player who doesn't use a tracker.
Yeah, me too. I very seldom ever play on PC. So yeah, I agree. I
Yeah.
think that's a really cool thing. I also like that maybe with a graveyard, because playing Magic always had a graveyard. Maybe they will come out with stuff that you can manipulate it. I mean, they kind of have some
Yeah.
things now, but I think maybe you can create some cards that say, hey, pull back this from your graveyard or something
Pull a
like
card
that.
into your hand or
Yeah,
something. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
So
That's
I mean
pretty
that's
exciting.
in concept, they just say new card mechanics,
Yeah, so
which is
yeah,
so
that's
vague. Like
yeah,
every new card is a new mechanic, but what do they mean new keywords? We know they're coming eventually, like destroy and discard, on reveal, ongoing. I
yep,
think new keywords would be awesome.
yep.
I hope they've never said anything about this, right? The only time we've ever had a dump of cards at once is when the token shop released.
Yes.
And then I guess the first week of January we got 2 cards, and tomorrow we get 2 cards. I would love to see them do little dumps like that every now and then. And new card mechanics would be a great way to do that, right? Like, hey, here's a new keyword, and here's 2 Series 2 cards, 2 Series 3 cards, and a handful of Series 4 and 5 cards that
Mm.
use this keyword, so that we can, build a whole deck around it instead of waiting for multiple weeks to be able to do so.
That'd be cool. That'd be cool. I would enjoy that. I want to ask you about now. We talked earlier about playing. Some people just play the game for fun. You just look to have fun. You had mentioned you like playing Conquest because of that. I came up with this ridiculous thing that I do every single weekend, and I play something called Weekends with Agatha. I make an Agatha
Yeah.
deck that I use for every weekend for weekend missions, and it works. I don't know why. I don't know how. I stick cards in that are in there that you have to play with, and they don't even have cards that make them work. I had Meek in there, and it didn't even do anything. It would sit there as a 1 card. What are some what are some guilty pleasures you have in this game? Like what's a fun thing you turn to? You were saying you go to Conquest. I know you love the card Valkyrie. So like for you, what makes, because I think it's important. I think people have to understand, while it is competitive, and it's a win or lose thing. And, we mentioned that earlier in the show too, but I think with anything, you really kind of have to find some fun in it. And if you're not, why are you playing? because if it's
Yeah.
just going to add more stress to your day, because goodness knows we all have a ton of that in real life, then why are you playing it if that's all it's doing for you? So what's some of the things that you do with Snap that you really have fun doing?
Okay. So very quickly, I'll touch on the Magic psychographic profiles. I don't know if you're familiar with those or not, but that's like their dev team tried to come up with like, can we identify why players play Magic? Like, what makes it fun? What motivates them?
Okay.
You have Spikes who want to win as much as possible. You have Johnnies who want to win with their own deck or on their own terms, and you have Timmies who want to win big. And Timmies and Johnnies don't care so much about the quantity as the quality of their win, right? Like
Okay.
Timmies, they're fine winning the 30% of the time, but when they do win, they want to completely smash and dominate their opponent. They're the ones who are playing the Onslaught, Iron Man, Tribunal. They get 650,000 power on every lane. I am almost entirely Johnny. So that's the creative deck building side of the game, usually very combo heavy players. I want to play my own decks and make them good. So a lot of it is that I want to experiment with decks and I'm okay if they're not doing great as long as I can, you know, pull off my own cool combos, some clever interaction that I haven't seen people use before, that kind of thing. I get a lot of satisfaction out of that. I am a little bit Timmy, and I am in a very small Discord. There's like 10 people in there, and we have an ultimate power challenge where we just like there's channels for all the cards that can get big, and it's like who can make the biggest dagger, who can make the biggest kitty, and it's fun making an entire deck around that. And it's like I'm probably not going to win 2 locations, but I can make a gigantic Human Torch, and that's fun to come up with like it. I guess in a way that's almost a Johnny challenge for me. It's not about the like dominantly huge Human Torch. It's like it's a deck building challenge. How can I make a cool deck that's going to make the biggest carnage possible? And I think I am winning on carnage. And the way I did it is I bounced it and then played it with Shuri. And
Oh,
so
nice.
yeah, I got to look how big is my carnage there. I made a 40 power carnage. A
Okay.
pretty big carnage. I've
That's
never
a
seen
big,
anybody
yeah,
play a carnage that big before, right?
yeah.
Um,
That's pretty cool. I I think I got a null. The biggest card I think I've ever seen was I got a null that ended up coming in at like 4 or 5,000 power at the end of the game. So see that kind of stuff is fun, and that's what I think. Now they may be incorporating some of that on that roadmap. I think there was also something in reference to
oh
uh,
yeah.
the cards that maybe you might have to do crazy things with some of the cards, like you were saying, get a Human Torch up to 30 or 40 or something like that. So maybe you might see that coming in. I like the fact that you said that you enjoy making your own decks, using your own combinations. I think what a lot of people do, and obviously now you have the deck creator, so people can just come in and just hit a button and it makes the deck. But I think a lot of people with this, and I even myself, I kind of got out of it. I love to create decks in Magic. That's what I did. That was the thing. You'd get a set of them together, you put them down on a table and be like, all right, what am I going to do here? What card goes here? Which one works? And that was one of the things and I got out of it a little bit in this. I kind of tended to see, like you were talking about earlier, you go and you watch a content creator and you see, okay, wow, this deck's doing really well. I'm just going to try to use his deck. But it takes a lot of fun out of the games, I think. And so doing things on your own a little bit, even if it's 2 cards that you throw into a shell that are a little bit different from what everybody else is doing, and see whether or not that deck succeeds. But I think a lot of people might be leery about that a little bit because they think to themselves, because they see these great decks that are out there performing well, that, well, ultimately I want to win, so I don't want to change it, because if I change it and it doesn't work, then I'm going to lose a whole bunch of ranks. So it's kind of a fine line you kind of walk there. But I think it's great that you enjoy doing that, because that's really what a game should be. A card game should ultimately be the person playing puts their own spin on the cards and on the things they can play. Now I know Snap's got a lot less cards, obviously, than Magic over the years and things like that, so it's tougher. But I think that's a big part of the game, so I like that. I love that. That's cool. You're the first person actually I heard tell me that Valkyrie is their favorite card, so that's awesome. So I think that's a big thing, and to do that, it just keeps the game fun.
Yeah. I mean, I'll go back to the player types, right? Like if somebody's a spike, it's okay if they just net deck. Like if they don't want to engage with the creative side of the game, that's on them. I agree. For me, the creative part is the most rewarding.
Yep.
And yeah, it's limited in stat, but we still see creative stuff happen every now and then. I mean, Lambie just had a tournament and second place had a destroy deck running Dracula, and it's like, of course, why weren't we doing that? Dracula
Yep.
to pull Null's power, that's ridiculous. But
Yep.
nobody was doing it, or at least it hadn't hit the mainstream. And so yeah, creative stuff can still emerge every now and then. December, I had a lockdown deck that was running Arrow as a critical card, and it was probably the strongest deck I've ever built. And that, it's so satisfying. That was the deck that I climbed to 996 with.
Nice. She's made a comeback,
So
Arrow.
People are psychologically, when a card gets nerfed, people stop. People drop off the card way more than they should.
No doubt. Yep.
So I'm really hoping whatever third game mode they make, they haven't said yet. They've like in some of the surveys that come out, they've talked about like 2v2 or draft mode. I hope that whatever it is caters to Johnny's, right? Like draft mode is very Johnny to be able to do something creative like that, or maybe a mode where there's rotations. Like here are 10 banned cards. Hey, what is the meta like when Shang-Chi is banned?
Yeah, that'd be fun. Yeah, that'd be fun. I've seen some tournaments that were played that way. Some of the people that had smaller tournaments will be like, okay, there's a banned cards list. You can't use Shang-Chi. You can't use this card. And it makes everything different. Yeah, that'd be fun. That'd be fun. Have you played in any tournaments at all or anything lately? Or yet?
I haven't.
Actually? No. Yeah, I haven't.
I never have.
Yeah.
It's not really my thing to be competitive like that.
Yeah.
But also I love our community, so maybe I need to join for a different reason.
Yeah. Yeah. I did see that Glazer and Gunny got together and they're going to do like a thing on that. So Glazer's coming on my show tomorrow night. So we're going to talk about that. But yeah, so that's coming up. So that's fun.
Yes.
I just think
I'm going to be in the Snap Judgments League.
There you go. That's exactly what it is. It's the Snap Judgments League. And a whole bunch of good people are going to be doing it. So yeah, definitely keep an eye on that. I know Glazer will chat more about that tomorrow. So all right. I can't thank you enough. This has been an absolutely amazing conversation. Like I said, I didn't even need to touch the stuff on the screen for the longest time because we just talked about it's been absolutely fantastic. And I appreciate you so much for joining me. I'm going to pop up Lauren's that's Lauren's Twitter site. She is at Lauren Whatevs. Make sure you go and check that out. I love your logo. That's really awesome. Did you design that?
Thanks. So it started as AI, and then I went in and touched up the eyes and added a nose ring.
That's really awesome. I love that.
I might have tweaked the shadows too. Like I made it better than the AI did.
That's fantastic. I love it. It reminds me of, well, I mean, again, I'm old. I grew up in the 80s. I still listen to that. There's music out there called synthwave music now that they play, which I absolutely love. That looks like the art design that a lot of the music, you see a lot of pinks,
like the neon colors.
Yes. Yeah. I really dig that. That's very eye catching. I love it. But tell my listeners out there where they can find you. Obviously, I have the Twitter up there. But yeah, where they can find you and what you're going to be up to as far as Marvel Snap goes.
Twitter's the best place. After that, I write intermittently at Marvel Snap Zone, and I try to write things that are interesting and different from what everybody else is doing. And I know some people like the economy stuff isn't as interesting as me doing a data deep dive, but whatever I'm doing, it's math heavy. And I'm wordy, but I try to make it interesting and funny and easy to follow if you've got the patience for it. So those are the two places, Twitter and Marvel Snap Zone. I should have an article with a Steven interview coming out in the next week or two.
Nice.
Keep your eyes peeled for that.
There you go. Definitely check that out.
Yeah,
I love it.
I'm so glad you had me on. I would come back Anytime.
Oh, you're definitely welcome to come back anytime. I love the conversation, and yeah, I love talking about all this. I love the insights too on the math and stuff like that. I think a lot of people need to hear that because they just have to realize that hey, it's just like I said earlier, the game just isn't out to get you. It actually works a certain way. So that's awesome. Thank you so much for joining me, and yeah, definitely come back anytime. Obviously, look for Lauren and. Guys, I will be having later. I have the kid Snap coming up on a video, and then of course I have Glazer back with me. So he will be chatting about the new patch and the new order and all of that, the Black Order, all the new cards coming out, and that and obviously that league as well. So have a great rest of your day, guys, and I will talk to you soon.